कंपेंसेट कर दिया है। तो मैं समझता हूँ आप सभी लोगों की ट्रेडिंग और इन्वेस्टिंग अच्छी तरह से चल रही होगी। अब मैं अनीश जी को रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा कि अनीश जी आप फेड के इंटरेस्ट रेट के संबंध में जो वो राइज करने वाले हैं, चूँकि ये 27th को शायद इसका डिसीजन आएगा रात में, तो हमारी जो मंथली एक्सपायरी होगी वो भी उसके बाद ही होगी। तो हम लोग इसके आधार पर वर्ल्ड मार्केट में क्या इसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा और वर्ल्ड मार्केट के साथ-साथ फिर आगे हम ये भी डिस्कस करेंगे कि उसके आधार पर हमारी मार्केट में उसका क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ सकता है। और अनिश जी मैं ये भी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा कि क्या इस फेड के डिसीजन के आधार पर कोई उसका असर हमारे रिजर्व बैंक के जो अगले महीने वाली मीटिंग है उस पर भी कुछ पड़ेगा क्या? तो इन सब बिंदुओं पर हम लोग आज चर्चा करेंगे। तो मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूँगा अनिश जी से, अनिश जी आप प्लीज़ शुरू करें। थैंक यू।
Thank you, Vajpayee ji. Good evening, everyone. So this is a very critical moment, and I would say also a very exciting moment because there is such a large event which is coming up in the next week, and which has the capability to move the world markets in either direction. Which direction we'll have to see. But the impact on global financial markets as a whole is going to be enormous because of so many expectations that have already been built in, to some extent priced in, and that will set the trajectory for future decisions by other central banks across the world, including India, as well as the other markets, that is crypto markets, commodity markets, forex markets, crude oil, this everything that is going to be linked up to this one important decision. So firstly, I'd like it to take you through with the journey. So 27 July will be, the meeting starts on 26 July, the FOMC meeting. 27 July, 11:30 p.m. Indian time, the decision will be announced, and the impact in our market will be seen on 28th July, which will be a Thursday. And the next meeting subsequent to that will be in September, and then there's two more meetings in November and December. So after this 27 July meeting, there are three more meetings lined up in this calendar year. What happens on 27 July will set the tone for possibly the next three meetings for the balance of the calendar year. And that will also impact what the RBI will do on 4th August. 2nd to 4th of August is the MPC meeting, wherein they will give the decision for interest rates in India. Before I actually, markets are poised at a very interesting juncture right now. So we've already rallied about 1,100 points from the lows we made a couple of weeks back. And the US markets and the world markets have rallied in anticipation. The Dow has moved up from 29,600 to roughly 31,500 plus today. So we've had a rally of almost 1,900 to 2,000 points. And Indian markets have also proportionately moved up. So there is a lot of anticipation that is built in. And at this moment, if there is any disappointment, there could be a reaction immediate. Or if something goes in, which people are happy, investors worldwide are happy, then there could also be maybe euphoria. So either way, now before we get into what those likelihoods are and the impact on markets, we'll look at some of the information and the data. What does it really show us in what direction we could possibly be heading? See, we can't say what will happen because that's very hard to say. And over the last weekend, we've had the US Fed go into a blackout period on Saturday. So what that means is that there will no longer be any more statements coming in from any of the Fed chair or anyone from the US Fed, because they have different, besides the Fed chair who's the overall chairman, they have for different states also James Bullard and all of them. They are St. Louis, and they are the different chairmen for different states. So they also make statements, but they are not allowed to make any more statements now before, as the event is very, very close. So they don't want markets to get influenced by that. So let's look at we'll look at some of the data coming in from the US, and that could give us an indication of probably what might happen. So what is firstly, the US banks, they have started declaring the results. Now, so far we've seen that the banks that the results that have come in, some of them have come in, the profits have gone down. That was kind of expected because there was likelihood of a slowdown. Now, the first point that I feel that if a recession was very likely to come into the US, there would one of the data pointers, that is the evidence, would be there would be a lot of pain at America's biggest banks and lenders. Now, so far, the top banks, they're not seeing any major signs of weakness as yet, but they do admit that they are getting ready for tougher times ahead because of the situation. So if you see the results from JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, what they reveal that Wall Street has been hit by a big fall in the valuations, and whereas the main street is just going along. So if you see, the credit card spending is still looking very healthy in the US from consumers, and banks are putting aside more money to cover bad loans, but they haven't seen significant problems yet. So basically, what does that show us? That they are anticipating difficulty and trouble, but so far they have not yet come across it to the extent that people were thinking. But there is a cover, there is a provision. That's a good thing according to me, because if you go back to 2008, we had the subprime mortgage crisis, which led to the GFC, the global financial crisis. At that time, the banks were just completely not prepared. There was a huge asset bubble which was building up, and that led to such a global financial crisis that it wrecked the whole global economy. I mean, most of the asset classes, the prices collapsed in 2008. But that kind of situation, dire situation, is not there today because of changes made. Of course, one is in the system, and the US banks being better prepared this time. So that's one indicator which is can be taken from a positive perspective. The other thing is that one of the bankers made a statement there that they said that if you don't look at anything else and you just look at the bank numbers, you would be wondering whether there is a recession actually around the corner or not. So because the bank numbers so far, at least, they have not reflected that kind of immediate threat of a recession coming in. Not that I'm saying that a recession won't come, but I'm only talking it from the perspective of the US banks, the numbers and the state of health of the banks as well as the consumers. Now, let's look at another point. So that's as far as the consumers are concerned. So there has been a big fall, a plunge in the deal making, and which has sharply reduced the money that investment bankers they are bringing in. Compared to 2021, they had a blockbuster number. You had COVID. See, and again, why did that happen? Because in 2020 you had COVID. To kind of mitigate the risks and the damage, the US Fed and then following other central bankers across the globe, they put in a lot of money, a lot of fiscal stimulus to support the economy so that it doesn't collapse due to COVID restrictions and the damages that could possibly be caused by that. So so much money was there in the system that there were huge deals that were taking place because of that. So, but now in come 2022, you have had inflation as becoming such a burning issue that the whole global system, financial system, has been affected, impacted. So as a result, people have become cautious, whether it's in the investment world or banking or consumers, and that is as a result the deal making has fallen roughly about 61%. Just giving an example of JP Morgan because that's one of the largest, and that was kind of expected because in the current situation they have not got many deals that have been done. Now that was the second point. Let's look at the third point. Other than that, the activity is looking strong. credit and debit card spending is up 15% year on year in the US. So consumers are shelling out much more money on gas, travel, because gas, because the prices have gone up compared to what they were a year back, and travel because they are sort of easing the restrictions. So what they couldn't do in the year or two, people, that pent up demand is there and people want to travel. So you see, if consumer spending is strong, then that's one indicator that shows how things are right now. So you can see, basically what I'm trying to say here, you can see how resilient the US consumer is, even though the inflation is high, but they're still spending. They have not resorted to a very big cut in the spending as of right now. And because of that, there is very low level of credit losses in the system. So there is very strong demand among companies for loans. And even though the confidence of some of the CEOs is a little bit down because of the situation, but there is strong demand that is there in the system. Now, that's the third point. Now, let's look at the fourth one, home lending. So, Wells Fargo, they reported 53% lower revenue. Why is that? So, home lending, why it's slightly hit? Because the prices of homes in the US, they are probably near or at a record high. The average median price of a home in the US is about $400,000. And that is pretty high. So that housing market is right now not reflecting the signs of a recession as yet. However, they could cool off because the affordability is kind of difficult. But as of right now, they are still pretty high. And the mortgage rates there are as high as 6% at the moment. With rising interest rates, and if the Fed hikes, on 27 July and then further, then you could go 6.5%, even 7% and probably higher. So that could cool off the housing market because your interest rate, the EMIs, that would go up, and that may make affordability of a home a little bit more difficult than what it is today. So what is the big picture here? Broadly, what are we saying? So broadly, we are saying that the numbers, they look solid. And however, that doesn't mean a recession isn't possible or won't come. So what is the banking system? What are the banks, the big CEOs, they're saying? The banks are they're saying right now is, let's hope for the best, but let's prepare for a recession in case one does come. And that is why they are providing and keeping a provision for loans and delinquencies, which they feel might happen. So the US economy as a whole is much better prepared and on a strong footing today as compared to earlier in the past, where they probably had not anticipated and factored in some of these things. And the last point before I give it back to Vajpayee, and then we can have some questions or discussions if you want, and then I'll proceed further, is gasoline prices in the US, they have cooled off. So the average has dropped to only $4.52 a gallon, and that is compared to when they had gone above $5 a gallon about a month back. Gasoline prices in the US, they say gas, we say petrol, is a key factor because there is firstly, the US population is 350 million, and how large the US economy, 70% of consumer spending consumer spending contributes to 70% of the US economy, which is very large. So that is why the gasoline prices, they matter a lot. And the White House, they are betting that there is more room to fall for gasoline prices, which will probably provide a positive, side effect of the global recession fear. So on one hand, there is a recession fear, which is keeping the gasoline prices down. And so recession is a negative factor, obviously, but the positive side of it is that will bring the gasoline prices down, which will help cool down the inflation. And somewhere down the line, that could probably, reduce the damage which could be caused by a recession if one comes across. Now, some of the bankers there and some of the analysts, they say they expect it to come down further to almost $4 a gallon, and that's going to be great news if that happens. The Gulf states, they could announce a boost in the production in the coming weeks, and that if it happens, that would ease the supply constraints. So if supply constraints go down, then your crude oil, which is currently at about $105 odd a barrel, the Brent crude, could come down to 100 or below. However, forecasting oil prices for the rest of the year is a very, very difficult, and it's a gamble, because Europe is hunting for replacement for Russian oil. They have said by end of this year they will reduce, or rather ban, the import of crude oil from Russia by up to 90%. So that's something which will support the prices to some extent. The other thing which could support the prices is China. If it starts easing the strict restrictions that it has to contain spread of COVID, then demand for crude from the world's second largest economy, and the world's biggest importer of crude oil, that could further support the prices and keep them at elevated levels. So it's not right now, it's not clear. Countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, what they will do in terms of their spare capacity, which is limited. So this is what I wanted to begin with. I'll give it back to Vajpayee ji. So as of right now, we are looking at some positive data, and that's a good thing. In amongst all this negativity, we have some positive data that's coming in so far. And on this positive note, we'll begin this, and we'll invite questions if there are any, and then we'll take forward certain other information and data points to look at a possible scenario, what might happen in the next 1 week or so. Back to you, Vajpayee ji.
ओके, थैंक यू अनिल जी. प्रिंस जी, आप कुछ अपना इनपुट देना चाहेंगे? हेलो प्रिंस जी. अच्छा, प्रिंस जी नहीं. श्रीनिवास जी, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप भी काफी अनुभव है आपको, तो ये जो हिस्टोरिकली जो हम लोगों ने प्राइस हम लोग रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट का राइज देखते हैं फेड का, तो इस समय कुछ पहले की तुलना में हम लोग अधिक राइज हो रहा है. तो आप जरा अपना अनुभव के हिसाब से बताएं कि इस इंटरेस्ट राइज के बेसिस पे अब जो हमारी थोड़ी सी हम लोग सेल ऑफ कम देख रहे हैं एफआईज की, तो क्या उस पर कुछ असर पड़ेगा, प्रतिकूल पड़ेगा या अनुकूल पड़ेगा? मतलब पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव क्या हम उम्मीद करेंगे?
ओके, थैंक यू वाजपेयी जी. एक्चुअली मुझे लगता है दिस इज जस्ट द नॉर्मल, मतलब साइकिल. द मतलब फेड इज बेसिकली डिफ्लेटिंग मार्केट्स इन अ वेरी कंट्रोल्ड वे. एंड काफी जो यूएस एनालिस्ट हैं उन्होंने लिखा है, जैसे कि आप देखेंगे लास्ट फ्राइडे को वो फेडरल रिजर्व का एक फेवरेट रिपोर्टर है वॉल स्ट्रीट जर्नल में, निक टिमोरास. तो उसने एक मतलब लिटरली S&P वाज गोइंग टू ब्रेक दैट 3700 की पिवट लेवल, एंड लिटरली 12 बजे उनके ट्रेडिंग टाइम पे एक न्यूज आर्टिकल आ गया सेइंग 1% नहीं, ये 0.75% रेट हाइक लाइकली लग रहा है वगैरह वगैरह. तो उसके बाद मार्केट का मूड थोड़ा अच्छा हो गया एंड वो लेवल टूटा नहीं. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि फेड नाउ वांट्स टू प्रोटेक्ट द मार्केट. एक्चुअली ये रेजिम चेंज हो गया है. तो फेड वांट्स टू स्लोली डेमोलिश द मार्केट, एंड उनको क्राइसिस नहीं ट्रिगर करना है, क्योंकि अगर क्राइसिस ट्रिगर हो गया उनको फिर से 5-10 ट्रिलियन डॉलर का वो बेल आउट देना पड़ेगा. उसके बाद डॉलर तो कचरा हो जाएगा, because then the US dollar will have no value if they keep printing money like that. तो मेरे ख्याल से they are going as per a very well thought through demolition plan. धीरे धीरे मार्केट को नीचे ले जा रहे हैं. मेन बैटल इज रशिया, ऑयल प्राइस एंड द पावर ऑफ द डॉलर. तो जब तक ऑयल ये हाई है, फेडरल रिजर्व विल कीप हैमरिंग मार्केट्स. तो अभी अगस्त में जुलाई 27 they will, most people are saying take up by 0.75. एक चीज जो होगा थर्सडे को, यूरोपियन सेंट्रल बैंक might increase interest rates for the first time in 11 years by 0.25%. इससे क्या होगा, डॉलर relatively थोड़ा soft हो जाएगा. So again the Fed has to come back with a higher rate increase in their September meeting. So I think there's no August meeting. So this is one factor. They will keep डेमोलिशिंग एसेट प्राइस मार्केट्स, क्योंकि बहुत एसेट प्राइस वेल्थ के वजह से लोगों की स्पेंडिंग बहुत चल रही है, अभी भी वो बहुत ज्यादा कम नहीं हुई है। सेकेंड फैक्टर इज क्वांटिटेटिव टाइटनिंग, क्योंकि वो अभी अभी शुरू हुआ है, जून 15 ऑनवर्ड शुरू हुआ है। इसका इफेक्ट हमने एक्चुअली बहुत टाइम में देखा नहीं है। एक बार देखा था, आई थिंक 2018 में, जब फेड ट्राइड टू पिवट एंड दे कॉल्ड इट द टेपर टैंट्रम, तो मार्केट सोल्ड ऑफ, और वाज इट 2019, मार्केट सोल्ड ऑफ, ये वो एकदम तमाशा हो गया, एंड फेड ने कहा नहीं नहीं, अच्छा अच्छा, कोई बात नहीं कोई बात नहीं, वापस इंटरेस्ट रेट काटा एंड वापस क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग थोड़ा कंटिन्यू होने लगा। तो पिछले 4-5 साल से वी आर सीइंग ओनली क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग। फर्स्ट टाइम वी आर गोइंग टू सी, तो हमारा सब एक्सपीरियंस उसमें बायस हो गया है कि लिक्विडिटी आता रहेगा, मार्केट गिरता है तो वापस दोबारा बाउंस होके हायर लेवल पे जाता है। This time I feel it will continue to bounce deep to lower levels and drop to lower levels, so it will make lower highs and lower lows. That's my outlook for the rest of the year. बाकी ये सब चलता रहेगा, यूएस डॉलर, इंडियन रुपी एंड सो ऑन, बट क्वांटिटेटिव टाइटनिंग इज अ बिग डायनामिक। किसी ने देखा नहीं है कि अभी ये इतना सारा पैसा जो छापा है, अभी वो वापस जब लेने लगेंगे तो किस किस का, यूएस रन्स ऑन लेवरेज सिस्टम, सो किस किस का लेवरेज पोजीशंस स्क्वायर ऑफ होगा, कहाँ कहाँ पे वो इफेक्ट आएगा, इन जनरल डॉलर का टाइटनेस बढ़ता जाएगा, एंड इट इज द स्ट्रैटेजी। इससे दे वांट टू ब्रेक द ऑयल प्राइस, दे वांट टू ब्रेक द रशियन geopolitical fight that is going on. Sorry, आपका डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन का डायरेक्ट आंसर, आई थिंक ये बेयर रैली चल रहा है, डजेंट मैटर फेड क्या करेगा उस दिन, 0.75 बढ़ाए या 1% बढ़ाए, आफ्टर दैट मार्केट्स आर रेडी टू फॉल अगेन, we'll break previous lows in Nifty, I'm talking. We'll break the 15,000 level by August, maybe September latest.
ओके, थैंक यू श्रीनिवास जी। तो देखिए, श्रीनिवास जी ने और अनीश जी ने, दोनों लोगों ने जो विचार रखे हैं, उससे एक प्रकार से ये स्पष्ट हो रहा है कि अभी हमको थोड़ा काशस व्यू ही रखने की जरूरत है, बहुत निराश भी नहीं होना है और बहुत उत्साहित भी नहीं होना है। तो हमारे बीच में फैक्ट फाइंडर जी हैं, अगर आप फैक्ट फाइंडर जी आप भी कुछ अपना व्यू इस पर देना चाहें तो आपका स्वागत है। आप प्लीज रिक्वेस्ट दे दें या मैं आपको इनवाइट कर लेता हूँ। फैक्ट फाइंडर जी, आप सुन पा रहे हैं मेरे को?
सॉरी सर, मेरा हिंदी बहुत खराब है, आप इंग्लिश से बात कर सकते हैं?
हाँ हाँ, काइंडली प्लीज प्रेजेंट योर व्यूज ऑन द Fed rate of interest hike, what we can see.
Okay. See, okay, I will put a caveat here first that, I've generally been on a holiday mode for the last 12 weeks. So I've not been as much in touch of what's happening on a daily basis, on the markets. But the simple, view is, see, why does the Fed and the ECB want to crack asset markets? Because the common man is struggling. The best example of what the ECB did, and this was sometime in January of 2020, was when there was a lady who commented on Twitter that it's impossible for me to buy a house because the prices just keep going up all the time. And one of the board members of the ECB quoted that Twitter and said, yes, we hear you. We understand it's becoming a problem for the common person to purchase a house. Everything is becoming expensive, and we will do what it needs to be done. I think that to say it so publicly says it all. And that is the problem that even the US Fed is facing. And we've never seen this kind of tightening cycle in a very long time. In fact, the best example of this is actually back to 1940s. But if you look at most analysis, uh, most people compare it, in the last 25, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years. So most comparisons by most strategists are in the range of as much as 40 years. Nobody really goes back, with the exception of one strategist, which is Lynn Alden, who does it back, way back about a year and a half ago. She actually wrote an analysis why the best example of this Fed policy would be based on what the Fed did back in 1940s. I would urge you to go back to May 2020 or June 2020 when she published a report. Now, in terms, so will the Fed raise it by 75, 100? Honestly, it doesn't matter too much. I think the markets have kind of digested. In fact, I think the markets would prefer a 100 basis point increase rather than a 75. If they do a 75, the markets will be concerned that the Fed is not done with their rate hikes, and they will continue with a lot more. But if the Fed were to do 100 basis points, I think the markets will give a sigh of relief to some extent. So that's one very important thing. What they do, whether it's 75 or 100 basis points. As far as inflation is concerned, bear in mind that the US as well as Europe are still not fully dealt with the energy crisis, and the energy crisis will expand by the end of December, when the Fed, the US and Europe will be able to try and diversify away from Russia and produce and would start implementing more sanctions on Russia and Russian oil products. That is a risk that is still not there in the market. As far as housing is concerned, I think whatever policies the Fed or the ECB do, and any central bank in the world, except about India, I would put India away from this. Every other central bank in the world is there to break down the real estate market. They do not, because real estate market in most of the markets in the world have been superb. It's been crazy, and I'll give you a good example. Right, real estate prices in rents in Singapore have gone up by 35-40% in 6 months. Right, it's crazy. I mean, that it's never ever happened, I think, in the history of Singapore. So likewise, you've had some crazy number of and real estate is a really big expenditure for people. So they have to break down the real estate market, and when the real estate market breaks down, you have the collateral impact of that. So bottom line is, you might have some sort of stability in the market right now, but just think about this one point, the last point I want to make. The street is building in 10% earnings growth for the US S&P 500 for the next 1 year. They're building another 10% earnings growth for the next year. We're definitely getting into some sort of a slowdown, a bit of a slowdown. It's not possible for those earnings to come through. My best estimate is that the earnings will remain flat for the next 2 years. If the earnings were to remain flat, and even if I attach just an average P multiple of 16 times, okay, just consider, for example, the US mortgage rate on the 30-year bond. That 30-year fixed mortgage is higher than what it was in 2012. Now, the US multiples were not as high at 16 times, but I'm giving it a benefit of doubt and saying 16 times is a decent average. If I apply that, you're talking about the US S&P 500 at 3,100. 3,100 is still another 25% lower than what it is today. Okay. Now, if the US is going to correct 25% eventually, okay, a year from now, I don't know what hope we have for other markets. That's my broad view. We might have, bounces here and there. I think we are in a technical bounce. That's been my belief for the last 2.5 months. But I'll be personally, I have to tell you again, I'm personally surprised by the resilience of the domestic flows. I have done several analyses of domestic flows in the last 15 to 18 years. I can tell you I've never, in the wildest of dreams, expected such strong domestic flows, not from retail investors, not from mutual funds, but from LIC and EPFO and NPS. I could never have built in such a scenario. That's all I have to say. But the fact of the matter is that I think, except for the Indian auto sector, where sales have not grown for between 5 years for four wheelers and 10 years for two wheelers, so you would expect a cyclical recovery. May not be a sustainable recovery, but a cyclical recovery. Autos is still only 3 to 4% of the index. Remember that. It gets a lot more, media mileage because, almost 15 to 20% of the time people will be talking about autos. But if you look at the index composition, autos is what, 4-5% max. So it's not a big deal. It's not even a big part of the economy, maybe 7-8%. But it just, draws a lot more headlines. But except for that sector, I'm not as positive on most other domestic sectors. There's one more clarification I want to make. There's a lot of people who talk about capex. They talk about chemical industry. They talk about sugar industry. They talk about paper industry. They talk about textiles. These industries are very, very small. Okay, I'll give you a nice, interesting data point. Between 2014 and 2018 or 19, Reliance Group by itself accounted for almost 35 to 40% of the capex of group. Okay, so the question is, you got to be tracking is what is Reliance's capex, right? That's more important than the capex. The second important point is government capex. The government, when they announced their budget, they included loans given to the state as capex. Now, if you're giving a loan to a state, you can't call that capex. Okay, they also included capex, which was a part of other government entities which were earlier not included. So if you made those adjustments like for like, the actual capex growth was only 12%. Now bear in mind, inflation has been greater than 12%. WPI is at 16-17%. So you adjust the capex number for the WPI, the actual capex growth is negative, not positive. I will end here.
Thank you, Fact Finder ji. You shared your valuable informations to our listener. प्रिंस जी, अब मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप भी अपना व्यू रखें कुछ. हेलो प्रिंस जी, है नहीं क्या प्रिंस? अच्छा, तो फ्रेंड्स, हम लोगों ने अभी अनीश जी को और श्रीनिवास जी को और फैक्ट फाइंडर जी को सुना और इन लोगों ने बहुत ही अच्छी अच्छी जानकारी दी. तो हम लोग फेड के रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के बढ़ाने के संबंध में भी अभी अनीश जी से मैं और डिटेल में कुछ और जानकारियां भी लूंगा. तो फैक्ट फाइंडर जी ने काफी डिटेल में हम लोगों को बताया कि हमारी फ्यूचर ग्रोथ की क्या एक्सपेक्टेशन है. तो इन सब बिंदुओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए हम लोगों को अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट के डिसीजन लेते समय ग्रोइंग कंपनी, जो इनके बीच में अगर कोई ग्रोइंग कंपनी हमको मिल जाती है, आइडेंटिफाई आती है, तो हम उनमें इन्वेस्ट करने के बारे में सोच सकते हैं. क्योंकि अगर किसी कंपनी में ग्रोथ नहीं होगी तो फिर मार्केट उसको रिवार्ड देती नहीं है. इसलिए ऐसी कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट करने का मतलब है हमें लंबे समय तक पैसे को फंसाना पड़ेगा. तो इन लोगों के विचारों से आप अपने जो भी भावी निर्णय हैं उनके बारे में सतर्कता पूर्वक अपना निर्णय ले सकते हैं. तो अनीश जी, अभी जैसा फैक्ट फाइंडर जी ने कहा कि 1% होने पर मार्केट ज्यादा कंफर्टेबल महसूस करेगी इंस्टेड ऑफ 0.75%, तो इस संबंध में आपका क्या टेक?
Thank you, Vajpayee ji, and thank you, Srinivas ji and Fact Finder for your views. Excellent. मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि the market as of right now, the expectations for a 1%, which is 100 basis points rate hike, they have been somewhat watered down and toned down because of the reasons that I mentioned. Gas prices are down, and there is a feeling that inflation is probably going to taper off somewhere around here, and the US consumer is looking healthy. The banks are looking not as weak or as bad as the fear was there. So मुझे लगता है कि अगर 1% रेट हाइक आता है, जो उसकी संभावना थोड़ी कम हो गई है पहले से, तो मार्केट उसमें एक नी जर्क रिएक्शन दे सकता है नेगेटिव साइड पर, क्योंकि वो प्राइस नहीं हुआ है राइट नाउ, एंड क्योंकि उसकी जो पॉसिबिलिटीज हैं दैट हैव कम डाउन. सो उसके वजह से one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reason, that is why the markets have given a rally. And yes, I completely agree that it's a bear market rally rather than a bull market. It's just a technical bounce in an oversold market. So see, whenever there is a technical bounce in an oversold market, there's usually some trigger which is there. So it's either some data point, or in this case, like inflation expectations have slightly, the threat has slightly come down in the mind of the investors. So 1% अगर आएगा तो वो मार्केट उसको नेगेटिवली लेगा, क्योंकि क्या है कि उसके बाद में आपका सितंबर एंड देन नवंबर एंड दिसंबर, तो अभी मार्केट ऐसा सोच रहा है कि 75 बेसिस पॉइंट्स का हाइक आ सकता है, एंड उसके बाद में 50 basis points in September and 25 basis points each in November and December. So अगर आप उसका वो टोटल लेते हैं तो 1% for the next couple of meetings and 75, so 1.75, and we are currently at 1.5. So 3.25 तक वो चले जाएगा, 3.25 to 3.5% के बैंड में, and then by March of 23 it could possibly go as high as 4% again, but that will depend on the situation at that time. It's hard to predict so far ahead. लेकिन अगर 75 basis points hike आता है, the markets could continue this bear market rally, this technical bounce which is going on. तो मुझे ऐसा लग नहीं रहा है कि अभी के 100 basis points आएगा तो मार्केट रैली करेगा, कि वो I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think so, because the market is moving in that direction wherein it is assuming that more or less the probability of 75 basis points is much higher than what it was earlier. And that is driving the markets and people to take that risk, again, and get back into equities. And you see the US dollar today, the DXY, it's about 106.5. I mean, it was last week as high as 109.29. It had made that high, and people are fearing that it's going to go between 110, to 120. तो वो भी थोड़ा सा उसका वो जो डर है, देखिए जहां भी डर होता है एंड वो डर अगर कम होता है, then the markets will give you a bounce, whatever it may be, because जो sword is dangling on the head of the market, if that fear is reduced, not eliminated but reduced, then markets always give a bounce. And that is the bounce that is happening right now in the global markets. Like today also about 500 plus points the Dow has rallied, some 31,500, 540 ऐसा कुछ चल रहा है. तो वो going into the meeting, that expectation is being built up. तो ये मेरा मानना है कि अभी इतना वो मार्केट ऐसे टूटेगा नहीं immediately. I mean, I'm talking about very short term, 10-15 दिन का जो सिनेरियो है, and बाद में अगर कुछ आता है, then depending on how the situation changes, then we could give again, and then we could fall back and things, and depending on how I don't think the Fed in this meeting will be so aggressive that they'll in one shot they'll just make it 100 basis points. Your ECB is also meeting on Thursday. They are expected to do maybe 25 to 50 basis points. See, 25 basis points is what they had committed. So that is what is kind of expected. But looking at the situation, how high the inflation is, the people are also talking that maybe they could do 50 basis points also. So again, it really depends on what they do, and Europe may the signs of recession are very much looming. And as FactFinder G also mentioned, there's an energy crisis, and there's in fact the signs of recession in Europe probably are more than in the US right now. यूएस का जो रिसेशन का है वो तो है ही, बट वो थोड़ा सा फियर मार्केट के मन में अभी कम हो गया. अभी मार्केट को जो उसको एंटिसिपेट करता है, इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी इट इज ऑलवेज राइट, but that is what the feeling is there in the market, and everything moves on sentiment. So sentiment right now is slightly, I would say, tilted towards the positive. But once valuations go up and go up to a certain level, maybe in the next week or 10 days, then probably we'll have a correction again and we'll come down. But right now, it doesn't look like we'll have a one-sided breakdown and go back to much lower levels from where we are right now. Back to you, Prince.
थैंक यू अनीश जी. तो अभी श्रीनिवास जी ने, फैक्ट फाइंडर जी ने और आपने तीनों लोगों ने जो भी व्यूज रखे, उनके बेसिस पर जैसे फैक्ट फाइंडर जी का भी ये व्यू है कि अभी ग्रोथ की स्थिति नहीं दिखाई पड़ रही. श्रीनिवास जी का भी एक व्यू है कि मार्केट में अभी डाउन साइड बाकी है. तो मैं आप लोगों से एक चीज मैं जानना चाहता हूँ, मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि आप अगर आपको उचित लगे तो आप बताइएगा. जैसे हम लोग जब बाइंग और सेलिंग दोनों पोजीशन देते हैं, एफआईज की नेट सेलिंग हो रही है, ये बिल्कुल निश्चित है. कंटिन्यूएशन में इतना लंबा अमाउंट उन्होंने निकाल लिया, बट एवरी टाइम दे बाई समथिंग, मतलब सेम डे वो 12,000 करोड़ की सेल कर रहे हैं, 10,000 करोड़ की बाइंग कर रहे हैं. तो जो वो 10,000 करोड़ की बाइंग कर रहे हैं और जिन कंपनीज में वो इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं, तो हमें क्या ये एक आइडिया नहीं मिल सकता कि जिसमें वो 10,000 करोड़ लगा रहे हैं, उस कंपनी के बारे में उनकी सोच क्या है, कि वेदर दे आर थिंकिंग इट विल ग्रो, या फिर उनको पैसा लगाना है तो कहीं ना कहीं लगा देते हैं. तो श्रीनिवास जी, पहले मैं थोड़ा आपका भी उस पर चाहूंगा, देन अगर फैक्ट फाइंडर जी इफ यू विल लाइक टू ऐड समथिंग देन आई विल सी.
Bajpai ji, I have limited knowledge, but basically FIIs, they have a net target on how much they want to withdraw. And there are maybe 1,000 FIIs who are active. There are about 3,000 which are I think registered. तो उनका एक नंबर है हर एक FII का, जो टोटली उनका नेट सेल या नेट बाय नंबर फॉर द डे है. उसमें दे आर रोटेटिंग सेक्टर्स, एंड आई थिंक इन द BSE और NSE वेबसाइट we can see that data on a fortnightly basis कि कौन सा सेक्टर में नेट उनका क्या है, एंड ऑफन दे आर नेट नेगेटिव फॉर द फुल मंथ, लेकिन fortnight, but there will be net buyers in one sector and net sellers in a bigger number in another sector. तो ऐसे सेक्टर लेवल पे देख के there can be some conclusions to be had, for especially for people who want to go into the long side. To Anishji's point, even I feel till 27th, broadly, this is a rally market. Mainly, we're debating August, May, whether we'll have a sell-off. I mean, that was my point.
फैक्ट फाइंडर जी, will you throw some light on this?
Yeah, see, very simple way. Just put this number in perspective. Okay, there's $600 billion of foreign FI holding in India. Okay, if I want to shift my portfolio within this portfolio, I want to just shift it by 2% in a month, which is not a very big number, right? Most portfolio managers change about 40-50% of their portfolio in a year. So in a month, it's about 3%. 3% into $600 billion is about $18 billion. If I have to shift $18 billion, I have to trade in and trade out $36 billion or probably more. Okay, in 20 trading sessions, I think what's it, and this is $1.8 billion into 7,500 crores is about 15,000 crores. So just think of it in terms of this number. And this is a conservative number. Bear in mind that 40% of the market volume is high frequency trading. There are a lot of hedge funds, a lot of traders, they get in and get out very quickly. The average turnover hedge fund could be about 12 times a year. So I think these numbers are fine. Don't look at it that way. As what are they selling 10,000 crores and what are they buying 12,000 crores? Don't look at it that way. It is just portfolio changes plus people just like you guys are traders, day traders. There are a lot of FIs who are day traders, traders as well. And then there's also the arbitrage guys as well.
ओके, थैंक यू फैट पांडा जी। हम लोगों के बीच में रजत बोस जी उपस्थित हैं। सर रजत बोस सर, अगर आप के पास कुछ समय हो तो अगर आप हम लोगों को ज्वाइन करके कुछ बोल सकें तो आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद रहेगा। मैंने आपको रिक्वेस्ट दी है सर बोलने की, स्पीकर के लिए इनवाइट किया। अगर आपके पास कुछ टाइम हो तो प्लीज। हेलो जी सर, आपकी आवाज आ रही है। थैंक यू फॉर accepting my invitation, sir.
So you want me to respond to what?
Sir, we are discussing on the रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट का जो हाइक होने वाला है फेड का, उसके बाद मार्केट को किस प्रकार से रिएक्शन होगा और मार्केट का फ्यूचर किस प्रकार से हम लोगों को सोचना चाहिए।
If I speak in English, that would be okay.
Sir, yes sir, बिल्कुल sir.
Okay, sir. First of all, everybody is fixated on Fed rate hike. If recently concluded, there was a roundtable conference at ECB in which Christine Lagarde and Bank of England governor, as well as Basel Bank of Banks, that is their chief, and Jerome Powell was there. When Jerome Powell was asked that, don't you think that if you raise rates very sternly, would not that hamper growth in the United States? Jerome Powell then categorically mentioned that my mandate is price stability, and it is the responsibility of the fiscal officials engaged in fiscal policy, that is basically the government, Biden's government. Growth is their prerogative. His prerogative is price stability. So you can jolly well understand that Fed is going to come up with a big hike. Big hike could be 75 bips, big hike could be 1 percentage point. That is it. And whenever interest rates move up, market actually suffers and downswing continues. But the particularly important thing that people are not noticing is this. Say, assume that Fed would not raise rates like 75 bips, or say maybe RBI will say that in India we are not so affected, we have to consider growth and all that, and they are not raising these rates. But the mandate that has already been calibrated as to how much bonds selling will be done by the Fed, how much bond selling will be done by RBI and other central banks in the world, that there is no such change. And it is that $16 trillion that was unleashed between 2014 and 2019, and thereafter from March 2020, or rather April 2020 to about October 2021, another $9 trillion. This $25 trillion that has been unleashed in the global monetary system, that is the mother of this humongous bull run everywhere. And that tap is now going to run dry, or already it has dried up, because now from quantitative easing, they are going for quantitative tightening. So this kind of discussion that whether Fed will raise rates or it won't raise rates, because we are already in the United States, we are already seeing it's a 40-year-old high inflation rate. Last time, Paul Volcker took it to 19%, 19% short-term interest rates. I'm not expecting that, but at least there would be some more substantial hikes going to come. And apart from that, we have a double whammy. So, I mean, it would be very uncharitable on my part to say that this rally may not continue. This rally may continue, but let us accept one thing, that the interest rate cycle in the world has already turned. And this cycle, the up cycle, lasted for 40 years. In fact, the whole neoliberal economic ideology led growth, which actually enhanced corporate profits, and only 1% of the US population have garnered so much of wealth, and middle class and lower classes have suffered. All this happened because of this lower interest rate helping corporate profits. Whether per capita income that way has gone up or not, that is a separate story, because wealth accretion for middle class as well as the lower classes, labor classes, that has not happened all over the world. That's why there is so much of inequality. I'm not talking like a leftist, not at all. The point is that I'm trying to tell you that we rather be very realistic as to what is going to happen. And if this means, already say Rupal Vansali talking on CNBC said that we are actually heading for a lost decade. It is exactly that. However much you think that RBI won't raise rates, if say assume that RBI doesn't raise rates at all, if that were to happen, or if they do not raise rates in a similar proportion to that of US, what is likely to happen here is that the currency will tumble. Currency vis-a-vis the dollar will tumble, and that will bring in inflation in the form of the cost of goods will become even dearer, especially when we are an import-dependent economy, especially that oil, we are getting cheap Russian oil, fine, but other things will not be as cheap. So we are in a quagmire. I mean, it's a very difficult situation now, but only go for huge margin of safety if you have to invest in the market. Otherwise, those frothy things, especially those story-based stuff and profitless growth like Zomatos of the world, they are not going to be supported. So we are heading for some kind of a difficult scenario. Hello.
जी सर.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to elaborate more? I think people would not be very happy listening to this.
नो सर, यू प्लीज एलोबरेट सर. हम तो आपके बहुत ही फैन हैं. बहुत ये तो हमारा सौभाग्य है कि आज हमको आपसे सीधे सुनने का मौका मिल रहा है. सर, आपका जो भी व्यू पॉइंट होगा वो बहुत ही हेल्पफुल होगा हमारे सभी लिसनर्स के लिए. सर प्लीज यू टेल मी व्हाट इज, जो भी है सर उसको आप फैक्चुअल हम लोगों को बताएं सर प्लीज.
देखिए, what I'm trying to tell you people is this, that forget those central bank driven bull runs. They are not going to be there anymore. These bull runs, a lot of people have claimed that they, people have actually taken credit for the portfolios going into several fold, multi-baggers have happened. But the mother of this bull run, the world central banks, now they are on a retreat mode. Now, what you should do when interest rates go up, the interest rates going up means that you will actually be paid higher interest for the same capital that you would have got. When such situations happen, actually the P compression takes place, because as it is, we are not very value oriented market, in the sense that here the GSEC gives you something like 7% now, and you look at the earnings yield of most of the stocks, they are far higher. Actually, the least risky asset, that is the GSEC, commands 7%, and whereas the risky assets, so there is a thing called equity risk premium, and that is simply not there. These things will be corrected, and all these years, for the last 20 years, perhaps value investing, although Warren Buffett might have invested in Apple or in Google, but think about it. Google and Apple, these investments are Apple has actually tangible stuff. It is not just the it's a software or something. And Google is the market leader in search engines, and Google has very good uh, uh, the earnings thing. Whatever they have, the model of earning cash, say YouTube or whatever. Now Google actually is going for all subscription based services. This means that these business models are changing. People who are waiting that more money will come to them from private equity players and all that, that tap is running dry, because there was a time when US Fed even bought corporate bonds just to give a boost to the economy, and they actually overdone it. They did overdo it during the COVID period. That is on a retreat mode, and now after being chastised by Joe Biden, Jerome Powell has clearly mentioned that he is going to consider price stability. So, what is your job? Your job is to seek the whatever stocks you buy, they should be value investing candidates. If now in such rising interest rate scenario, value investors or value investing will actually succeed after maybe say 25 years or so, and the so-called growth investing or momentum investing, this is not going to help. And this is not for the next 6 months. This is for this decade. You, because I study interest rate cycles, and interest rate cycles right from say 200 years back in the US as well as through the Bank of England. Whenever there has been such huge inflation, I'm not saying hyperinflation, it's a very high inflation. The scenario actually when the inflationary press to come bring down inflation, when interest rates were raised and other things, equity markets suffered. There are very good books on that. The History of Interest Rates by Sidney Homer. You read those books, you will understand what is going to happen. Exactly, you will get a good idea. A lot of people, a lot of fund managers, a lot of bulls will come and say, oh, this is going to be over within 6 months or so. No, there can be bear market rallies that could last for several weeks, but it is not going to solve the problem. Actually, FIIs will continue to sell, because look at it this way: if Vietnam, Mexico, these kind of countries are posting better growth rates and they are offering services and goods at a cheaper price, why should the foreign portfolio investor buy in our markets? Already they have lost what? Rupee has depreciated by 8% to the dollar. So that means that is the thing that they are losing, and over and above that, stock prices are going down. We are lucky that they are not selling further. If they start selling again, they will. If once they get higher prices, they will sell again. That's why you find so much of difficulty we face at 16,250. 16,250 to about 16,580. This is the range where most of the selling will come. And even if you manage to push this index Nifty to about above 70,000 levels, you will see FIIs will lap it up and sell. And one more thing I would like to mention here is that Nifty, check the history. Nifty bottoms out when the P reaches 13 or 12. It is still 19 or 20. So expecting a bottom, and the bull market is back. A lot of people are doing studies. 8 months, we have only seen 8 months of bear market. The average age of bear market over the last 20 years. My question to them is that average age of bear market is 8 months. I accept, but why 8 months? Why not? Why not more than a year? Simply because it is a huge money-driven bull market that ruled the world for the last 20 years. And that is not going to happen. Just the opposite is going to happen. Quantitative easing to quantitative tightening. This is the thing. So, I mean, you people have asked me to talk, but this is the truth that I can actually share with you, because my study of financial history, my study of the kind of stocks that actually move, this is what I get. That's why in every show, whenever I appear on media, I try to emphasize, do a simple thing. Whenever the intermediate downswings and intermediate upswings you study, only Nifty or maybe indices you take, you notice that the the time duration of those downswings and the price amplitude of those downswings are far greater compared to the corresponding rallies that happen. If the rallies last for 24 to 29 days, sometimes a downswing lasts for 60 days, 50 days, and the falls are greater. This is the situation that never happened, even when there was another bear market, or not bear market, a bearish phase from 2015, 1st of March to about 29 February 2016. That is the longest downswing phase we have encountered over the last, say, 7-8 years or so. And now this one is already 8 months old. But that time, again, fresh money came in and rescued. This time, no fresh money is going to come that way. I'm not saying foreign portfolio investors would not come and invest. I'm saying central banks would not unleash monetary packages like they did earlier, because they first have to shrink their balance sheets. Fed's balance sheet is $9 trillion. It has been only a minuscule part of it has been liquidated. The bonds have been sold. Otherwise, their huge balance sheet still left to be shrunk. I think I've told you enough negative things. Pardon me for saying.
सर आपने अपने इतने लंबे अनुभव का, हम तो आपके बहुत पुराने फैन हैं, तो सर मैं ये कहूंगा कि आपने जो भी बताया ये तो खैर आपने बिल्कुल अपने लंबे अनुभव के आधार पर जो बताया उससे हम लोग कोई डिनाई नहीं कर सकते। बट सर आपके अंदर ये भी कैपेसिटी है कि आप इस प्रकार के सिनेरियो में भी हम लोगों के लिए सदैव कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा इन्वेस्टमेंट का आइडिया देते रहे हैं जिससे कि हम लोगों ने प्राइस अर्न किया है, पैसा भी अर्न किया है। तो सर अगर आप कुछ 1-2 आइडिया सर अगर हमारे से लिसनर को दे देंगे तो हम लोग आपके लिए थैंकफुल रहेंगे।
देखिए, इस टाइप का सिचुएशन पे आपको ये चीज देखना है कि ये देखिए, कोई इसका कोई डायरेक्ट आंसर ऐसा कि ये स्टॉक ले लीजिए अच्छा चलेगा, आज से अगर 3-4 महीना पहले आपने पूछे होते तो हम बोलते कि आईटीसी ले लीजिए, आईटीसी चलेगा। बट आईटीसी अभी जिस लेवल पे पहुंचा है, इस लेवल पे कुछ सेलिंग भी आ सकता है, क्योंकि लोगों को लगे कि इन्फ्लेशन के कारण वो कितना इन्फ्लेशन बायर को पास ऑन कर सकते हैं। वो जितना पास ऑन कर पाएगा उतना उसके लिए बेहतर है। बट ज्यादा पास ऑन करते हुए एक चीज होगा, उनका वैल्यू ऑफ सेल्स, दैट इज इन रूपी टर्म्स, यू माइट सी अ ग्रोथ, बट चेक द वॉल्यूम्स, हाउ मच। look for stocks, just as I told you. I give you the idea that these kind of rising interest rate scenarios, squeezing of money supply, value investment candidates, they do well. And frothy, especially, even, see, Asian Paints will remain a great company, but never forget that a great company is not always a great investment. In fact, it is a great investment when you identify it at a very low price or reasonably low price. That's it. Otherwise, if you buy a great company at a very high price, it's a lousy investment. And that kind of lousy investments, I wouldn't like to name any such companies, but there are lots of blue chips that are still selling at very high levels. And one more, the thing that I would like to tell you is that Seth Klarman is a great value investor, and Seth Klarman said that he loves cash. He likes to park it, and he likes to remain it parked. Only when he finds a compelling opportunity, then he deploys it. You see how cash has increased in Warren Buffett's portfolio over the last 5 years. It was $44 billion, and now it is 120 $3 billion or something that happened early part of this year. He has done some purchases. Maybe it has come down the cash level currently, but actually in some situations you should simply hold cash. And this idea that if you hold cash you will lose the opportunity to, all of you are, I suppose, since you are participating in the Twitter space, you are regularly following the market. If there are good opportunities, you will definitely buy and look for things like this, that there is a big opportunity that is coming in the paper space. Why? Because plastic is going to be banned. Every packaging was used to be done by plastic, and very soon something that is strong enough made up of paper or some other thing that is compositable. That means if you put it on the ground, on the soil, it will go inside the soil and decompose itself over a period of time, which plastic didn't. If you can find such companies, then they would actually show a lot of growth, lot of possibilities would be there. Apart from that, certain commodities might do well, but always look for your margin of safety. Margin of safety is very important in today's markets. If you pay a higher price, you will actually sacrifice several years of growth down the road. And stocks like IEX and all, these are story-based stocks. These stories, they may actually do well going forward, but still, looking at its revenues and other things, you will find that they are highly overvalued. So avoid such story-based stocks. Look for opportunities where the companies are able to pass on the inflation. When the cost of goods have gone up, that kind of thing. That uh, if such higher cost of goods can be passed on without sacrificing volume, maybe you will find only one or two stocks that will actually pass this criteria. Uh, if you buy them, then you are likely to benefit. Otherwise, special situations, just as I mentioned to you, that in paper or similar kind of material, some company who are doing such thing. Conventional paper stocks, people are buying helter-skelter, conventional paper stocks. No issue, not a big deal. They will be fully priced very soon. But that kind of companies who could actually supply such things that it will be a strong straw, that is वो अमूल के दूध का जो छोटा पैक मिलता है अभी 200 मिलीलीटर का, वो अभी पूरा सील करके पैक आता है, उसके संग कोई स्ट्रॉ नहीं लग के रहता है क्योंकि प्लास्टिक स्ट्रॉ हैज बीन बैंड. एंड दैट काइंड ऑफ स्टाउट स्ट्रॉ बाहर से लाने से उसका भाव बहुत बढ़ जाएगा. 1.5-2 रुपया सिर्फ स्ट्रॉ के लिए ऐड करना पड़ेगा, माल बिकेगा नहीं. That kind of stuff will be made in India. Some companies could be doing it. It can't be that no companies. I have not been able to find at the moment. Doesn't mean that such companies are not there. Find out such companies. They will do well because it is the threat of substitute for, rather it is an opportunity. I would not say it's a threat. It's an opportunity for some companies who could do it, and they will actually rule the roost. I suppose I have given you some idea as to how you would invest in this kind of a market.
जी सर, आपने बहुत अच्छा आइडिया दिया सर हमको. सर एक रिक्वेस्ट मैं और करूंगा, थोड़ा कुछ सर फार्मा सेक्टर के संबंध में आपका क्या व्यू है, क्या उसके प्रति आउटलुक रहना चाहिए सर, क्योंकि बहुत डीप करेक्शन उसमें हो चुका है, तो इस पर सर आपका थोड़ा सा व्यू मैं जानना चाहूंगा.
देखिए, फार्मा में एक चीज हमने आपको फॉर द टाइम बीइंग अवॉइड करने के लिए बोलूंगा, क्योंकि दैट इज द testing. I mean, like Lal Pathlabs, and then Meds. There is a company based in Hyderabad. They are now offering even more freebies, like 1799 में सब कुछ करा देगा. उसके बाद में भी फिर आपको 75% छूट देगा, कोई भी टेस्ट कराएंगे. These are things possible only when free money is available. Otherwise, look for pharma stocks, not right at this moment. They can still slide down. Some stocks are showing potential like Divi's or Dr. Reddy's maybe, but wait for a dip. If you go to my Twitter handle, I would see that I've written there that when everybody is shouting for stocks, don't participate there. And when everybody is shunning it, वो जिस दिन वो डीप आए, जो स्टॉक आपने चुन के रखे हैं उसी में तब पैसा लगाइए, वो आपके लिए बेहतर होगा. और फार्मा में जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट रिसर्च बेस्ड स्टोरीज है ना, वो स्टोरीज ऑलरेडी फुल्ली ओवरवैल्यूड है, उसको अवॉइड कीजिए. हम ज्यादा स्टॉक के नाम इसलिए नहीं ले सकते हैं क्योंकि स्टॉक के नाम लेते ही सेबी का फरमान ये है कि हमको वो फिर ये आपको जो कहानी सुनाया इसका ट्रांसक्रिप्ट रखना पड़ेगा, उनको भेजना पड़ेगा. बिकॉज आई एम अ वेरी लॉ अबाइडिंग पर्सन. आई डोंट वांट टू create any problem with the regulator. That's the thing.
जी जी सर, थैंक यू सर. आपने
हेलो
Ashish, can you please wait for a while? Rajat sir, hold.
हाँ बोलिए.
Actually,
Tell me.
सर
I can't hear you.
Can I ask a question, sir? Hello.
Somebody was asking a question, please.
हाँ आशीष बोल, हाँ पूछ लीजिए, आप क्वेश्चन पूछिए अपना.
रजत जी, आपका जो नॉलेज आपने शेयर किया, इट इज रियली वैल्यूएबल, नो डाउट अबाउट इट. सर, जब मार्केट अभी जो नीचे गिरेगा, सबसे ज्यादा कौन सा सेक्टर पिटने जैसा है सर फिलहाल? मतलब कौन सा सेक्टर पे फोकस करना चाहिए नीचे जाने के लिए?
देखिए, आईटी विल कम डाउन. आईटी में साइकिल्स चलता है. आईटी बैंक्स को थोड़ा सा अभी अवॉइड करिए क्योंकि rising interest rate scenario will actually bring in fresh NPAs. That's very likely. But IT जो है, IT में अब जो लीडिंग स्टॉक्स है वो नीचे की तरफ जब आएगा, आपको जैसा मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि इन्फोसिस 1250 के नीचे मिलेगा. ये दिस इज बाय द वे, दिस इज जस्ट अ प्रोजेक्शन. इट्स नॉट दैट इट इज कार्व्ड इन स्टोन दैट इट विल गो टू 1250 और इवन लेस. उस टाइम पे आईटी स्टॉक्स आप चुन सकते हैं जहां पे जो बिजनेस एफएमसीजी इन सच सिचुएशंस लाइक जहां पे ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ जाता है, बाकी कुछ बिकता नहीं है. बट एफएमसीजी स्टॉक्स, ITC was undervalued for a long period of time, but now I wouldn't say that it is deeply undervalued or something. Below 200 it was deeply undervalued, but not at close to 300 rupees. On dips you can think about that. And as I said, that there will be new leadership. That leadership won't be bank, that leadership won't be IT, that leadership could come from some other place. Metals have been dumped in the recent past, and metals, if world economy is going to a recession, then immediately metal stocks would not go up. But keep this in mind. Most, I would say that mining for fresh mining has not been done for the last 15 years. According to Jerome Grantham, since 2006 or so, there has not been very many major projects in mining. So there will be a time when you will get these mining and mineral stocks. They might actually do well. And what you should avoid, that you first decide that is the story-based stocks. Why this story? Story comes in only when you do not have tangible or real performance. When you do not have real performance, when you are actually portraying a golden future, but for which we do not have a clear past. That is a new thing. Such kind of things can only happen when there is too much money sloshing in the system. But if that money is absent, then story-based stocks won't move. So avoid story-based stocks. You are seeing some story-based stocks at such prices, but they can even go down from here by 20-30% or even more, because I have seen 2700 DSQ software going down to 4 rupees and finally going into oblivion, totally that stock was no longer there or something. Those things do happen. So avoid story-based stocks. If needed, wait for good value investing opportunities. Only then, I would say, it may be too early to actually fish for good stocks at current levels, because they will seek lower levels. If the frontliner stocks do not go down, how do you think Nifty will go down and reach a P level of 1213? The 1213 will translate to something like 12,500 Nifty levels. So that kind of level will come at some point in time, but it may take time. Before that, we can even see 17,000 plus levels. But this is not just that intermediate bear phase. Again, the bull market will restart. For that to happen, again, Jerome Powell would have to cut interest rates and start buying bonds. If that happens, then definitely you can expect that. But that is not going to happen, because everybody has understood that they have overdone this accommodation, monetary accommodation. So look for value investing opportunities.
Thanks, Rajat.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'll interject you for a while. Yeah, Vajpayee ji, I see Sharad sir in the listeners. Can you please send him a request? And Rajat sir, the views you just echoed are similar, which have been shared by Sharad Shah sir time and again. He was also of the opinion that due to overvaluation, we may see 12,000 level in near future. So it would be interesting to have him also. And in the meantime, I have a quick question from you. You were talking about the testing or diagnostic space. So basically, pricing pressure we see across diagnostic space, but it is a volume game.
That's what I'm trying to tell you, that they are still the competition. See, initially, if the venture capital or other people are funding you, or Tata's are funding 1mg, then you can carry on giving good discounts. But at some point in time, maybe, and if you have deep pockets like Google, that they will come up they will charge for your Gmail or other services or YouTube and all that. Then all these companies can survive. But not every company is an Amazon or a Google. But all these companies are dependent on this kind of money, free money coming through private equity, venture capital. That tap is going to run dry, and this kind of freebies that they are giving. But one thing I definitely do admit, because I have studied the testing and diagnostic space. Actually, some people long back, at least 2-3 years back, said that the commissions given to medical professionals and others, if you reduce that, ultimately even a company can make profits at 25% of the listed cost if they offer services. But that may be a wafer thin margin then. And so I would suggest, do not invest in any of these at the moment. They will also come down, because everybody thought that COVID, the kind of testing things that happened during COVID will continue for at least 4-5 years. Even some of these promoters, I heard them on TV in 2020 as well as 2021, that this COVID thing will continue till up to 2025. Now you see there's a huge number of vaccine ampules are unused, and that's why government is coming up with a 75-day window in which from government hospitals you will be given this. Who is making money here? So testing space is actually a very difficult space.
Sir, basically we have a large unorganized, approximately 85 to 90% are unorganized players. So there is huge potential to grow on that front. So basically the competition would be there for sure, as you were saying, and pricing pressure is reality in diagnostic space, but of course valuations can be debated. But seeing like if the purview is 5 to 10 years, how you see the space growing? Because diagnostic is one unalienable part in healthcare, and with increasing awareness, people are even adhering to basically self testing what you say. So, and fact finder has raised hand quite along, so he can also come in after Rajat sir answers this question.
See, I would say that I'm not saying that diagnostic or organized diagnostic space will not grow. They will definitely grow. They will definitely grow after 2001 or 2000 crash in IT. IT has flourished again. It isn't as if that if there is a severe bear spell on a particular space, that space will not grow again. But as I said, that a great company is not a great stock. But if you are purchasing it at I'll give you an example. I gave this example at IIM Calcutta, and I would like to give the same example. Uh, uh, when you are justifying, say, the valuation of IRCTC or IEX at a high PE, say current PE may be 75, then you say, no, FY25 PE will be 25. But that means what? FY25 means 31st March 2025. So what you are doing, you are actually sacrificing the growth of the company till 31st March 2025. Because then if you consider that projected earnings, if it really comes about, then your investment would be justified. But my point is simply this. Nobody is compelling you to actually invest. You see, who is the compulsive buyer? A short seller is the only compulsive buyer in the market. You and I, as investor, we have a choice. Why do we need to deploy our market? And that FOMO phase is gone. Fear of missing out. I will not get an opportunity. In fact, in bear markets, you get plenty of opportunities to buy. Plenty of opportunities to buy, and you will get that. Those of you who are young people, I will say that generally in 30 years, you will get 3 or 4 opportunities like you got it in 2020. So if you can wait, I'm not saying that you would not invest now or you would not invest next year. Definitely, if you get a candidate who is good, then definitely do that. But it doesn't mean that you have to invest your money whole hog. No, not that. That's it. I suppose you should give others a chance. I'm actually monopolizing the conversation.
Yeah, fact finder, go ahead, please.
सर आपका व्यू सर इतना इम्पोर्टेंट है, आपसे हम लोगों को बहुत ही सपोर्ट मिल रहा है, तो ऐसी बात नहीं. लेकिन फैक्ट फाइंडर जी, आप प्लीज अपनी यदि कोई क्वेरी हो रजत बोस सर से तो आप कर लें, या अपना कोई व्यू आप रखना हो तो साथ में सब रख दें. हेलो, हाँ, कैरी ऑन फैक्ट फाइंडर जी.
No, sorry, I thought I didn't realize I was on mute. I was just saying that I have to congratulate Mr. Rajat Bose. I think he's extremely well read. He made so many different points, and just speaks about his wealth of knowledge and his breadth of reading. Really a pleasure to listen to what you say. I just wanted to add a couple of. I mean, there were so many points I wanted to talk about and add as well, but I've forgotten. But I will just tell you a couple of things. One is on just to the most recent point was of course on this diagnostics. See, two very important things. The cheapest supplier of diagnostics that we know today is ThyroCare. Their cost of supply is 1/10, or from a customer's point of view, the average cost of supply is something like 70 or 80 rupees or 60 rupees a test. Okay, they are significantly lower than anybody else. Now testing is a commodity. You as a customer really don't care where you get the test result from. Commodity companies cannot or services do not trade at very high multiples. Period. Unfortunately, the market has taken these stocks up, And because valuations have become expensive, private equity says, you know what, if the market is willing to pay for a commodity services business such a high P multiple, let me also finance such a new business, which is one of the reasons why so many companies have entered the diagnostic space on the organized side. Unfortunately, people keep forgetting this about India. India, when it comes to specialist things like diagnostics, where there's a very high cost involvement, there's a very limited market because of the purchasing capacity of people in India. And I keep coming back to that point that, only 10% of Indians actually earn 25,000 rupees a month, which doesn't really leave much money on the table for a person to spend on regular diagnostics. And, only 2% of 2% or 25 million Indians earn above 5 lakhs a year, which is about, 45,000 a month. So just keep that number in mind, that it's not like India's penetration is very low. You have to think about penetration in terms of capacity to spend. If you go to a laborer, he's not going to spend on diagnostics, right? He probably just trying a simple thing. So that's the point I wanted to make. So there's so much competition. The sector is a commoditized services sector, and so eventually will and the cheapest supplier is supplying the same service at a fraction of the market. Just bear that in mind. That's one point I wanted to make. The second point is where I slightly differ from Rajat Bose, is that about I agree entirely that we are moving from a market of growth and momentum towards a market of value, and that changeover will take a few years, but it'll be very severe. The only question, and I want Rajas to think about, is that one of the things that has caused momentum to come about is nothing but your ETFs. And today, if you look at global flow of money, a large part of it is ETF. Like in the US, probably 50% of your AUM is ETF only. And ETFs, by their very nature, are momentum. As a stock's market cap goes up, it gets into the ETF, and that forces other active fund managers to actually buy the stock. So it adds more and more momentum. So that is one confusion is in my mind, is that will ETFs really still allow momentum to continue or not? That's a confusion that I have. That I want to, the last point I wanted to make, and Rajat said it very, very well, is that interest rates, people just make a big deal out of it. I think the most important thing is leverage in the system. And I wrote a tweet thread about the euro. Most of the European banks, by and large, borrow in US dollars, and they lend in non-euro currencies and non-US currencies, right? When their borrowings effectively inflate because the US dollar has inflated, they will either be forced to reduce their leverage, or they'll be forced to infuse more capital. The European banks are not going to get capital instantaneously. So what they do is effectively they call back loans. And a lot of the loans given by European banks are to emerging markets. It is also given to highly leveraged institutions like traders, like commodity traders, like hedge funds, like other institutions. The point I'm trying to make is that as the US dollar, which is a global short currency, is continue. I mean, it might take a backseat right now, but it might overall again continue to strengthen. That is not good for these European banks, which in turn will reduce leverage in the system. So just keep that in mind. I want to end here.
ओके फाइंडा जी, थैंक यू। मैं अपने सभी लिसनर्स को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, रजत बोस सर हम लोगों के बीच में हैं, तो यदि कोई रजत बोस सर जी से आपका सीधे इंटरेक्शन करना चाहते हैं, कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते हैं, तो आप लोग अपनी स्पीकर की रिक्वेस्ट भेज दें प्लीज। आपको ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटी मुश्किल से मिलेगी, क्योंकि रजत बोस सर को हम लोग केवल टीवी पर ही देखते हैं और सुनते हैं, तो डायरेक्ट कन्वर्सेशन करने का आज हम लोगों को मौका मिला है, तो इसका आप लोग थोड़ा सा लाभ उठा लें और अपने मन की कुछ भी शंकाएं हैं तो आप उनसे सीधे पूछ सकते हैं। वैसे तो सर ने बहुत ही विस्तार से हम लोगों को सब चीजें बता दी हैं, फिर भी अगर कोई इंडिविजुअल अपना प्रश्न रखना चाहता हो तो प्लीज आप अपना स्पीकर का रिक्वेस्ट भेज दें। श्रीनिवास जी, आप भी कुछ वैसे बहुत सर से अगर कहना चाहते हो या उनसे कुछ उनके विचारों से कोई आपका वो हो, सामंजस्य हो या कोई उस पर वो, तो आप भी अपनी बात रख सकते हैं सर।
No, I think Rajat Bose जी ने जो बोला, everybody I request आप बाद में recording just that part आप 2-3 बार सुनिए. He's condensed a lot of history into that. एक point पे मैं additional comment मारूंगा on the average age of bear markets being 8 months. I've asked every bullish friend the same question. They have no answer. If we have had the longest bull cycle in history, which is 14 years, why cannot we have the longest bear cycle in history? So averages are misleading. We should look at what might actually pan out.
If I may respond, then I would say that.
Sir. Ji, please, sir, carry on, sir.
I would like to say that I mentioned this 8 months because recently Gurjota, a Twitter handle hai, that guy is actually a young investor.
Yes,
and
sir,
he has
sorry,
done
I didn't mean you are saying it will be a short bear cycle. Sorry,
No. I'm saying that this 8 months average is actually found in the recent bear markets. But the point is that the context of last 20 years, that was not at all conducive for any kind of longer bear markets. But we have seen since 1996 to 1999 bull run, I would say that there was more or less every year a few months in the initial phases will be bullish. Even then, not many stocks would move up, but otherwise we were going through a bear market. Only IT stocks performed. Why did they perform? Because American economy at that point of time was doing well, and American economy has had a lot of demand for our IT services. Still, the same thing holds, but the point is that when the world over the situation is changing, the longer bear markets are now coming to rule. And we are only at the initial phases. That I did give a hint that Rupal Vansali talked about a lost decade for this particular decade of the 2020s. That means that there will be a lot of problem going forward, and the bear markets will be elongated. I also said that you actually look for margin of safety and value investing. That is very, very important, because margin of safety, if you buy a stock at a very low price, then you are likely to lose much less, even if it goes down from your buy price. But if you buy the story stocks, you will see, let time pass on, you will see what happens to the story stocks. I have seen them, I have read about them, because I follow the dictum of a former Merrill Lynch research director. He said that when he joined after passing from business school, early 70s, he joined Merrill Lynch. At that point of time, they were busy formulating mathematical models. So mathematical models were very in thing then. It is still the in thing in MBA schools. But the point is that when he was about to retire, in his retirement speech, he mentioned study financial history. If you do that, you will actually get a handle. Because I tell you, the simple thing is that the mistakes that the mistakes that your father made, you suffered for that. You only heard about the mistakes that your grandfathers made. But actually, it is the mistakes of your grandfather that you are going to commit. You are not going to commit your father's mistakes because you have suffered for those mistakes. So here things do repeat. you will be told that there is only a technology revolution now, maybe the last 20 years or so. But if you read, if you hunt, you will find that right from, say, early 18th century till about the current date, there had been 5 such technology cycles, including the industrial revolutions. And see what happened. Exactly in the same manner, things happen. Things are happening. And I really want to comment fact finders' views on the leverage. The leverage is the most dangerous thing, and there is a lot of leverage everywhere. Regarding his ETF comment, I would say that let the bear market stay beyond a year or maybe 1.5 years, with, of course, intermediate rallies in between. You will see slowdown in ETF investing by investors, because what happened? You don't have to do anything. It's simply you put your money in ETF, and especially if you put your money in Nifty ETFs in India. Nifty, actually, those people who are managing the Nifty composition, that body or whatever, what are they doing? All performing. If a stock is found an underperformer in the Nifty, that is thrown out. Swiss Cement is the recent case, maybe, and some performer is brought in. So in that, if you do that, most of the time you will see that the index is actually outperforming a lot of stocks. That has happened till date. But when money will be in short supply, money will be dearer, these things are not going to happen. These things not going to happen. So ETF money will also come down. This has happened earlier also. Look at the 60s. You will find that that kind of money was also there at that point of time. But when the tap ran dry, everywhere. That's why when I used to teach value investing here, I used to tell people that I'm only afraid of the biggest bull, because biggest bull is the not some individual. Biggest bull are the central banks of the world. Because I strongly believe आपकी पॉकेट में पैसा है तो सब कुछ सस्ता है, और आपकी पॉकेट में पैसा नहीं है तो सब कुछ महंगा है. What fact finder said that only 10% of people actually earn 25,000 rupees a month. This shows the actual buying power of the masses. That is still not so. And remember this, masses consume products. Rich people, I'm not saying that rich people are bad or something. Rich people do not spend as much money proportionate to their wealth. So unless masses have higher income, higher per capita income we actually achieve, then only you will see that we can actually sustain economic growth, and also stock market bull runs can continue. Not with this artificial thing of money, inflated money. Not this. I think I've told you enough. And I really commend Fact Finder. I really commend Srinivas ji. Very good. I just chanced upon your Twitter space, and this I saw the question on fate. That's why I became interested and I joined in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. आपने
रजत भाई, ये जो आप बोलते हो निफ्टी 12,500 हो जाएगा और देयर अबाउट्स, मैं डर के बोलता हूँ 12,000 होएगा, और अभी 16,400 है.
नहीं, देखिए एक बात मैं आपको कहना चाहूंगा.
नहीं, सर सुनिए.
अच्छा ठीक है, हाँ बोलिए.
अभी निफ्टी 16,400 है. आप अगर स्टॉक्स देखेंगे तो 30%, 40%, 50% डाउन है. तो ये जो सिंथेटिक नंबर है वो तो अपना दिल बहलाने के लिए है. वास्तव में अगर आप इन्वेस्ट किए होते कोई भी लेवल पे तो आप लूजर ही होते. आपने लाल पैथलैब वो 3800 में ले लिया, 1900 हो गया था बीच में, तो 50%, 40% सब डाउन है. अब दूसरा एक बात बोलना है सर कि वो जो आपने समझा निफ्टी कंपोनेंट का, लेकिन ये निफ्टी कंपोनेंट बदली करते करते वो कुछ बचेगा ही नहीं आखिर में उनको कंपनियों के डिबेंचर डालने पड़ेंगे, ऐसी हालत आ जाएगी। और
See, I can tell you one thing, because I have seen earlier also. I mean, I came early 90s. I mean, I've seen Harshad Mehta bull market and all that. See, the Nifty, why Nifty will go down? निफ्टी 12,500 मैंने पकड़ लिया कि जो अभी निफ्टी का अर्निंग्स है, वो अर्निंग्स के साथ आप एक मल्टीपल डालो, तो वो अर्निंग्स के साथ मल्टीपल डाल के अगर P13 बनाएगा तो उसी के आसपास जा सकता है। इसीलिए मैंने 12,500 बोला है। ऐसा भी 12,500 एक मेजर सपोर्ट है। बट point is this, that another 20% fall in the Nifty, sometimes what will happen is a bear market happens because of, you don't have to trade stocks. The prices can fall on its own weight. I'll give you an example. There was a time when I tried to sell a stock at, say, I was making very good profits. It was the early 2019, 98, 99, around that time. I'm talking about Apollo Hospitals. It went up to a high of 505 or so. I started putting a bid at 500. It did not go. Even it did not go at 480. Finally, I got my feel at 473. At that point of time, when the stock started falling, it did not fall through transactions. It fell simply because there had been no buyers. So that kind of situations do come in. And if you see that there will be some stocks that will actually show you 10%, 15%. Tell me one thing, CG Power, it has moved up from 5 rupees to 200 rupees, 210 rupees. Now it's a good company and it is now under a very good group. But CG Power, or there will be companies that will actually sell for very low prices. And see, lots of another major sector, that is the telecom sector. In India, what is the average? What is the ARPU, average revenue per user? It is maybe 165, 170 or something. And look at the balance sheets of all these telecom companies. Long back, I read an article in the late 90s in Economist. At that point of time, there was a special article on market, and it said there are 4 dogs businesses. One is telecom, another is brokerage, and then airline, and then there is media. These businesses actually do not make money for the shareholders.
रजत भाई, दो बात बोलता हूँ, दो ही बात है। अपने लास्ट जून में वो 16,000 थे, आज भी 16,000। इसके आगे 2019 जनवरी में 12,000 थे। अभी वो जो रिजल्ट आ रहे थे उस टाइम, उससे अभी जो रिजल्ट आते हैं वो बहुत ही खराब है। खराब is the wrong word, weak is the right word. So I'm not a chartist, I'm nothing. I don't know how to read charts. But from my experience of 45 years or 44 years, I can say this market cannot sustain. Yes, 1,000 points here or there. But in the long run, we will have a bear market. A bear market in the sense we will have sideways, whatever. For next 4-5 years, you have discounted everything in it, in the price. 70p, 80p, 130p. So, okay, just
insane PE levels.
Yes. So, in the short run, it's okay, but in the long run, it cannot be sustained at any rate. और लास्ट बात बोलूंगा, फिर मैं स्पीकर मोड लिसनर मोड पे चले जाता हूँ। शेयर लेना है, हाँ मैं लेता हूँ, बहुत लेता हूँ। MNC के लो, आपका पैसा डूबेगा नहीं, और निफ्टी 12,000 हो जाएगा या 10,000 हो जाएगा, वो 4-5% से नीचे नहीं जाएगा। थैंक यू। ये आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है किसी का?
नहीं आ रही है सर, आवाज आ रही है आपकी।
नहीं, मेरा बात तो खत्म हो गया
अभी। मिस्टर होस्ट, आप गुरमीत को रिक्वेस्ट करो ना, वो कुछ बोले। इज अ काफी अनुभवी इन्वेस्टर है।
रजत भाई थैंक यू। आपके सामने बिल्कुल भी अनुभव बहुत कम है। थैंक यू मेंशन के लिए। और मैं सुन रहा था डिबेट। आई थिंक मार्केट का यही खासियत है, डिफरेंट व्यूज मेक द मार्केट। सो आई थिंक some very good points made. I think you made a very right point on the way money has been printed in last 10-12 years, राइट। आई थिंक तो वो एक कंसर्न है। और आई थिंक एक बात जो मैं हमेशा सबको बोलता हूँ कि ये साइकिल को कंपेयर करना बहुत डिफिकल्ट है किसी प्रीवियस साइकिल से, बिकॉज हम बहुत सारे एनालिसिस आते हैं कि इंटरेस्ट रेट जब यूएस में गया था तो इक्विटी मार्केट कैसा किया था। वी फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम यू हैव अ राइज इन रेट्स अलोंग विद क्वांटिटेटिव टाइटनिंग। तो जब लिक्विडिटी विड्रॉ, हाँ तो वो कैसे प्ले आउट होगा, ये एक जिसे हम कहते हैं ब्लैक बॉक्स है। एंड आई थिंक वी हैव टू सी हाउ इट प्लेज आउट। मेरा एक बड़ा सिंपल रूल है लाइफ में, दैट आई डोंट प्ले द प्रिडिक्शन गेम की, क्योंकि मेरे को नहीं पता है। नोबडी नोज व्हाट मार्केट विल बी टुमारो, 3 months डाउन द लाइन, 6 months डाउन द लाइन। तो प्रिडिक्शन गेम में जब आप पढ़ते हैं तो थोड़ा यू आर टेकिंग अ बाइनरी कॉल। आप एसेट एलोकेशन और स्टॉक सिलेक्शन गेम में रहेंगे तो प्रोबेबिलिटी एंड हर चीज प्रोबेबिलिटी में है मार्केट्स में। नथिंग इज श्योर। या सो उसमें थोड़े ऑड्स आपके ऑफ मेकिंग मनी इम्प्रूव। और मुझे कुछ पॉकेट्स में मे बी आई एम अ लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर एंड आई एम प्रॉब्ली मोर ऑप्टिमिस्टिक देन सम ऑफ द अदर्स बाय नेचर एज वेल। मुझे काफी पॉकेट्स में काफी वैल्यू दिखता है। दैट डजंट मीन दैट कि उन पॉकेट्स में और करेक्शन नहीं आ सकता। 10-15%, 20% बिल्कुल आ सकता है। स्टॉक कैन फॉल, समटाइम्स द मार्केट में डू वेल एंड द पॉकेट यू लाइक में फॉल, राइट। सो अभी आप देखिए रिलायंस अच्छा कर रहा था पूरे फॉल में। It went down, it went up from 24 to 2,800 when Nifty came down to 15,500, and then suddenly there was this windfall tax, and today, there is a cloud over कि अभी gas companies में भी tax आएगा, so we don't know how things will play out. And मैं 2005-6 से इन्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, 2002 से करियर स्टार्ट किया था। One thing I have learned in the market, when there is excessive pessimism, when there is lot of negative news around, typically if you hold your nerve and you take investment decisions in terms of having a approach, it tends to do better. और एक और चीज जो मैंने मार्केट में सीखा है, discipline will score over intelligence. So if you are disciplined, you have a certain guidelines to follow कि मैं ये करूंगा, ये नहीं करूंगा। और ये एक चीज से मैं अग्री करता हूँ इस ग्रुप में कि अगले 2-3 months are more about what not to do. If you do that, I think 90% of the job is done.
But Gurmeet, do you see excessive pessimism? Because money is still flowing into SIPs and all. This doesn't show that there is excessive pessimism among the retail. The market generally doesn't bottom out without retail throwing up their hands.
तो सर एक्चुअली ना दो ग्रुप्स हैं यहाँ पे. सो बिकॉज आई मैनेज इन्वेस्टर मनी फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, इंक्लूडिंग व्हेन आई वाज वर्किंग विद सिटी बैंक. तो जो HNIs और फैमिली ऑफिसेज में है वहाँ पे पीपल आर स्लाइटली कंजर्वेटिव, राइट? आई वुड नॉट से दे आर पेसिमिस्ट, they are very pessimistic. At the same time they are not optimistic either. They want to play the wait and watch game. So वहाँ पे whether you speak of corporate treasuries, you speak of family offices who have, let's say, 4-digit portfolios, they have taken some cash call also in the portfolio. Some, I would not say proper hedging, but they have taken some cash call and they are not incrementally putting capital to work. Retail flows, sir, अभी क्या है, 1 साल का return is flattish, right? So if you have even started, let's say, an SIP 1.5 year back, you haven't made much money. If it's a multi-cap fund or if you're only also doing stocks, in a small mid-cap, the correction has been deeper. So abhi wo tug of war hai. I mean, if it sustains for another 2-3 months, even the retail will tend to either stop investing or reduce the flows. थोड़ा softness आया है flows में from what they were, वो month on month data पे भी दिखता है. But at the same time, what has also happened is that a lot of money is also getting diverted, especially of the young generation, because I do a lot of college interaction also, from cryptos also to financial assets. थोड़ा सा FNO वाला भी trade कम हो रहा है, right? So I think it's a bit of a balancing act playing out, and so far the flows in retail and affluent people are good. Family office, ultra HNIs, they are quite conservative. In fact, to a large extent, they are right now.
Gurmeet, how do you explain investing in 80, 90, 100p? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, Sharad bhai. बोलिए.
नहीं, आप 80-100 के पी में कंफर्टेबल है?
देखिए, मैं ऑब्वियसली हाई पी पे जब इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ रहा होता है तो अगर आप अनरीजनेबल प्राइस देंगे ग्रोथ पे तो ऑब्वियसली नोबडी विल बी कंफर्टेबल. इनफैक्ट अगर अर्निंग ग्रोथ नहीं है तो मतलब 20 का पी भी कंफर्टेबल नहीं है, राइट? और अगर अर्निंग ग्रोथ है तो थोड़ा एक रीजनेबल ग्रोथ आप देख सकते हैं. इस मार्केट में थोड़ा सा वैल्यू रिवॉर्ड हो रहा है ग्रोथ पे, जो कि बहुत टाइम बाद हमने देखा है. तो whether it is ITC, whether it is some of the PSU names, whether some of the dividend yielding stocks, थोड़ा सा आउट परफॉर्मेंस आया, थोड़ा रोटेशन भी हुआ है मार्केट में. एंड आई थिंक इफ यू पे एन अनरीजनेबल पी राइट नाउ व्हेन योर 10 year bond is 7.5%, क्योंकि वो अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट है आज एंटर करने का, चांसेस आर अगर आपको प्राइस करेक्शन नहीं मिलेगा तो टाइम करेक्शन मिलेगा. So paying a very high PE, I think may not work in most of the cases, unless there is, some liquidity related news of the stock or some special situation, or let's say a merger or any other activity. But in a normal scenario, 9 out of 10 times, आपको या तो प्राइस करेक्शन देखने को मिलेगा या टाइम करेक्शन देखने को मिलेगा.
नहीं, जैसे गुजरात अंबुजा का हुआ टेक ओवर, so the ruling price was 420 और जब अखबार में आने लगा और इनसाइडर ने बेचना चालू किया, so the deal happened at 360 or something. So don't you think we are running way ahead of the acquisition price? Means sum of all parts के भी ऊपर अपने चल रहे हैं. Okay, anyway.
हाँ, कुछ पॉकेट्स में यस, कुछ पॉकेट्स में वैल्यूएशन अभी भी स्टीप है. मैं अग्री करता हूँ, और स्पेशली जहाँ पे अंडरलाइंग अर्निंग वीक है और वहाँ पे अगर मल्टीपल ज़्यादा है, चाहे वो प्राइस बुक हो. हमने बैंक्स में भी देखा है जो 5-5, 6-6 के मल्टीपल पे ट्रेड होते थे. इवन somebody like HDFC hasn't done well. So they used to get 5 multiple because they used to grow more than 20%. Now if you are also growing in line with ICICI or the industry, ICICI is actually doing much better on credit growth and all parametrics, then the market will make you time correct if not price correct.
Yes.
तो वो अच्छे स्टॉक के साथ होगा. मतलब वो कोई भी हो, अगर आप सी ग्रोथ प्रीमियम मल्टीपल इज फॉर इंडस्ट्री लीडिंग ग्रोथ and you being exceptional. But if you are also in line with peers, then you will not get that kind of multiple. So everything is relative in market.
ये सब अभी और एक लास्ट बात बोलना है गुरमीत.
बोलिए सर.
जब आप टीवी पे आते हो तो मेरा ब्लड शुगर 200 होता है और आपको सुनता हो तो सीधा 400 हो जाता है।
अच्छा, बढ़ जाता है सर?
हाँ, बहुत बढ़ जाता है, बहुत मीठा बोलता है।
अच्छा,
बहुत स्वीट बोलता है तो। वेरी नाइस।
सर, थैंक यू, आई टेक इट एज अ कॉम्प्लीमेंट, थैंक यू।
यस, इट वाज अ कॉम्प्लीमेंट प्लीज। और ये टाटा कंज्यूमर जो आपका फेवरेट शेयर है ना, आई डोंट नो, वो बहुत घटेगा, कुछ नहीं है उसमें।
अच्छा, ठीक है सर। अभी क्या है कि टाटा कंज्यूमर 2016 में मेरा एक बहुत अच्छा मित्र था, उसने वहाँ उनको ज्वाइन किया था और मुझे कुछ इंसाइट दिया कंपनी पे। तो मैं उसका नाम तब टाटा ग्लोबल बेवरेज होता था, तब तक ये मर्जर वगैरह नहीं हुआ था। तो मेरे को सर क्या है, मैं थोड़ा सा लेजी और लंबा इन्वेस्टर हूँ। मैं 10-15-20 साल स्टॉक को रखता हूँ। तो ठीक है, अभी कुछ कुछ तो गलतियां भी होंगी, तो विच इज ओके। सम बस चलान नहीं कटना चाहिए। छोटा मोटा एक्सीडेंट है, चलान कटना मतलब एक्सीडेंट नहीं होना चाहिए। छोटा मोटा चलान कटेगा, चलेगा, दैट्स फाइन।
राइट, थैंक यू।
शरद सर, एक मेरे को डीएम आया है, रजत जी पूछ रहे हैं आपका व्यू कैस्ट्रॉल के ऊपर, अगर आप बताना चाहें तो।
किसके ऊपर?
सर कैस्ट्रॉल का उसने पूछा है आपका नाम लेके सर।
कैस्ट्रॉल 5% डिविडेंड यील्ड है, कंपनी है, धंधा अच्छा खासा चल रहा है, लोगों को पसंद नहीं है, मेरे को बहुत पसंद है। मैं रोज 2-3 हजार लेते रहता हूँ। ये है। फिर एक कंपनी है कैना मेटल करके, कैना मेटल, मेरे को लगता है 10,000 से भी कम भाव नहीं होना चाहिए, इतना अच्छा कंपनी है ये, टूल्स वगैरह में है। See, my entire portfolio is MNCs only. मैं इंडियन कंपनी नहीं लेता, इंडियन कंपनी बेचने का फ्यूचर। ये जो ये अपने एवीबी है, 2500-2600 का भाव है, वो भी 10,000 हो जाएगा। सीमेंस 5,000। I'm not saying in next week or next month, over up। तो ठीक है, अपना पैसा से 8% से ज्यादा रिटर्न छूटता है, क्या चाहिए अपने। और जो लोग भी इक्विटी में डालते हैं, वो अगर सोचते हैं कि बॉन्ड 7.5-8% है, why you should be in equity, for what reason? There is no reason। अगर आपको लगता है 2-5 साल में आपका पैसा डबल ट्रिपल चौबल होगा तो ही डालिएगा, और मत लगाइए। ये इक्विटीज आर वेरी रिस्की, जिसकी कोई सीमा नहीं है। एक चीज गलत आ जाएगी, आपका सब मूड और पैसा चला जाएगा। बोलिए।
Right, sir. So, Fact Finder, when Gurmeet sir was talking, you have raised your hand. You have anything to say? Fact Finder? Okay. So, Rajat sir, you have any concluding remarks or maybe anything which other discuss, any point on that?
Concluding remarks, actually, I would say that I broadly agree with Gurmeet in his observation regarding that there will always be opportunities even in markets, and there will be value. Definitely there will be, but generally the bullish overtone that we have been noticing, that will be missing. So I would suggest any stock that you want to buy, if the business is good, if you have studied. By the way, in your discussion, I have participated not as a chartist. I have participated as what I do for myself, that is value investing. This TV has actually made me a card carrying technical analyst, but I actually began my life as a fundamental investor. Anyway, that's that aside. I would say that look for margin of safety, because if you have margin of safety, then you will be better off. And otherwise, look for opportunities, because the whole market cannot become a bear market, that there will not be companies that will be doing well and getting good valuation. But only thing is that you will see some stocks, even maybe some of the checkered banks, I mean, very well-known banks like HDFC Bank and all, even if they perform, as Gurmeet said, that if they are not positing industry-leading performance, then they will not get higher P compared to the others. So these stocks, either they will go down or they will stagnate. You have seen between 2008 and 2016, Reliance didn't go anywhere. Between 1999 to 2009, lever hardly moved. Such phases will be there, because during that time, your PE adjustment takes place. And some of you, if you want to, if you want to study how you should actually play in a range bound market, that market doesn't go down, doesn't, but uh, in that case, I would suggest one of my favorite investors. I follow him a lot. That is Vitaly Katzenelson. Little book of range bound markets, probably little book of sideways markets. You can read that book. You'll get a lot of insight as to how to play when the markets actually don't move. How would you conserve your money, and how would you find opportunities?
Right, sir. Thank you so much. So we have one or two more requests. In case if you have time, we would love to have you more for listening insights from you guys. So Rahul, you can unmute yourself and ask a question from the panelists. Rahul, if you can hear us, kindly unmute and ask a question, please. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, we have Fact Finder. There was some issue previously. Yeah, Fact Finder, you had raised your hand that time. Over to you.
So I had just two things to say. The first is, and then the question, and I'll put a question at the end of it. The data, two data points don't suggest to me that people are bearish. Let's look at the global data. Let's look at the India specific data. The global data suggests that the exposure of investors to equity as an asset class versus other asset classes is still, and this is, I think, data that was published by either, I think, Bank of America recently, is about 49, 50 to 53%, which is still higher than pre-COVID. Okay, because what's also happened is that bond valuations have corrected. So while we think that markets have corrected, because other asset classes have corrected as well, the equity exposure is still fairly high and much higher than pre-COVID. And so it doesn't suggest, there is no evidence to suggest that, and if you look at another data point of flows into equity funds, there was a $1 trillion flow. That tipping point has just reversed barely 5-10%. So again, that doesn't seem to suggest from a global perspective that there's been a lot of bearishness. Let's look at India. Since Gurmeet was mentioning that he felt that HNIs were having a little more cash, the question you got to ask themselves is, how much is that cash level versus a very bearish phase? I don't think we are anywhere close to that. And let's give a very good data point. Let's go back to March 2020, when when foreign institutional investors sold 68,000 crores in the month of March. The markets crashed 15-20%. In the month of May this year, May and June, foreign investors sold 110,000 crores versus 68,000 crores then. The markets did not budge. I have never seen domestic flows so strong ever. And by the way, that's not reflecting in domestic mutual funds. It's reflecting in, it's domestic mutual fund flows have actually slowed down a little bit. Retail volumes have obviously come off. The retail volumes, cash volumes, peaked in February of 2021, almost 19 months ago. Sorry, it's not 19 months ago, quite some time ago. Yeah, February 2021. Okay, about 14, 15 months ago. The point I'm trying to make is that there is no evidence, at least as of June, that retail India or domestic India is bearish on the market. The last question I wanted to ask both you as well as Rajat K. Bose was, when you look at a company, and if I look at especially a lot of the companies in the index, especially the domestic oriented company like FMCG companies and even the chemical companies and a lot of these companies, right, where even cement companies, if you look at their PE multiples, what is the implied long-term growth of these companies? When some companies trading at 60, 70, 80, 100 times, like DMart is trading 110 times, what is the long-term implied growth of these companies? And have they even achieved that in the last 3-4 years? That's the question I wanted to have. Because my mathematics suggests that most of these companies are implying a long-term growth of 25 to 35%, while they have not achieved anything close to that.
Gurmeet, you would respond.
Yeah, I'll give you some data on flows. So for example, I think this entire flows is being looked as in homogeneous data. It is not. So I'll tell you where does the buying also come from. So obviously SIP book is public knowledge. That's 12,600 odd crores. It hasn't gone up now in last 2-3 months, and incremental stoppage of SIPs is now more, especially in the fintech platforms. So if you reach out to people in Grow, or even Paytm recently decided to move people to brokerage, there are a lot of terminations of SIP, because what happened was a lot of people started SIPs looking at 6 months performance. So the highest selling SIP fund was Tata Digital Fund. So, and the highest selling debt fund 6 months back was a Guild Fund. So that's what happens when you do not have, when you have only robots and algos and people looking at performance. So some softness is there in the SIP data. It will possibly reflect a little more, but it is obviously nowhere close to COVID, because COVID people were not sure whether they'll be alive or not. There were job losses, there were salary cuts, so there was a lot of chaos. So one is, and June, by the way, market fell 5-6%. So it's not, it did not fell because it got cushioned off. Second category where the money is coming from is the EPFO money, and now obviously there is talks of 15% going up to 20%. Now that could mean another 1,200-1,500 crores a month, which could come, which could again lend some support. So the retail money is steady. I'm saying incrementally the SIP book is not going. Last 3 months the figure is broadly the same. You could see some softness, as I said earlier, if another 2-3 months market does not move, or let's say even correct. So it's a bit of a tug of war right now. We have to see if the retail blinks or not. My sense is that retail has shown a long-term view to SIP, and if you have a 15-year view, and if you are an investor who has started 2 years back, 3 years back, I think it's a golden period for you. The more units you accumulate, and thanks to Twitter Spaces, which you guys are organizing, thanks to social media, thanks to a lot of, I would say, people, there is an inculcation of long-term habit. And this is not, as I keep saying, this is a marathon. This is not a short-term game. Then there is another category of fund which everybody forgets. It's balanced advantage fund. Now, what has happened in last 3-4 years in this, Rajat sir, is that this category has become 1.5-1.6 lakh crores. ICICI का BAF अकेला 40,000 crore का fund है. Then HDFC, both hybrids put together, is another 30-35,000 crores. Kotak BAF is 20,000 crores. SBI का जो equity hybrid fund है वो 52,000 crore का है. So this category has become so big. So थोड़ी भी rebalancing होती है, because this is P based and some of them are price book based. Some of them have other indicators कि 5% correction होगा तो equity बढ़ाएंगे. तो जब ज़्यादा fall आता है market में, let's say Nifty, let's say in June for example, if Nifty cracks went up, I think 15,500 बीच में आया था. तो अगर आप 10% भी equity weightage बढ़ाओगे, so what happened was that this category was at 35% equity at 18,400 because that time the PE had touched 27, 28 times. Yeah. Now, when PE touched 17, 18, the category became 50, 60% equity today. Mm-hmm. So what happened? 20% of 1.7, 1.8 lakh crore is 40,000 crores. और इसके लिए fresh पैसे की जरूरत नहीं है. ये rebalance होएगा. This is the correction in the market. Then there is insurance money, which so my sense is we are heading towards a view where the retail flows will continue to be strong. You can say financialization of savings. You can say long-term habits. Other thing which a lot of us don't understand is that you will be probably be 5 trillion in next 3 to 4 years. We can debate कि 2026 में होगा, 27 में होगा, 28 में होगा. We can debate that. India saves 20%, right? Which means you are going to save 1 trillion. अब 10% भी उसमें equity में आएगा, तो you will have, let's say अभी 5 आता है. So if I remove corporate saving, individual saving probably 16%. आप 16% ले लो तो उसमें भी 50, 60, 70 billion dollar आता है. So that's on data. So I'm saying there is a tug of war. Retail hasn't it's slowed down a bit, but it's still constructive. HNIs, family offices, because I deal with them, I manage a fairly large AUM of 2,200 crores. The sense I'm getting is they want to play the waiting game. They want to stay on the sidelines. They're not tinkering too much with the asset allocation, but they're keeping some cash handy. Leverage system में नहीं है. Leverage system में काफी कम हुआ है पहले से, and that's one sign that on the second question, Rajesh sir, you can take. I'll just have 2-3 things to add. I look at 3 filters when I buy companies, and I don't say whether value अच्छा है, growth अच्छा है, momentum अच्छा है, कोई chart देख के करता है. सबका everybody has a method, and I have respect to all schools of thought, and I've said this live on so many platforms. I follow a pattern which suits me, and I have some investors who think that this pattern suits them, because end of the day, as I keep saying, personal finance is personal first, finance later. I follow 4 filters. My first filter is the company's top line doubling in 4 to 5 years? Which means, am I growing at 15-18% in top line? Second, it should happen, more the better. There are companies who have done better. Second, is that happening with expanding margins or steady margins? So let's say Sun Pharma का turnover 2014 से अभी तक 3 times हो गया है, but margin has shrunk because US generics had been pressure. भाव 1200 था, अभी भी 7-8 साल में कोई movement नहीं है. Maruti used to have 20% operating margin. Today it is struggling to even get into double digit, and used to be 10,000 rupees in 2016. Today also it's between 8,000 to 9,000 range. So it has to happen with expanding margin. Now this will only happen if you are continuously innovating or expanding the pie. So that can be, innovation can be in form of product you are selling, innovation can be process engineering, innovation can be use of digitization, innovation can be in any aspect or any new technology or technical skills you have equipped. Fourth, I will never touch few companies wherever I see any governance issue. So even if promoter has done something in the past, I will not vote for a change of heart. So ये 4 filter लगा के और एक ROE का लगा के कि is the company doing double digit ROE, 7,000 companies में से कुछ 70-80 रह जाती हैं. And that is where and I am not somebody who's chasing 20-25%, so I am very happy with anything double digit that comes my way. And in a bad year, if I fall less than the market, I'm happy. Rajesh sir, about you?
Yeah, broadly you have summarized it pretty well. I mean, my approach is also similar. That there was a time when things used to get very scary because the prices were shooting up and all that, and people were running after them. But generally, what I have kept it as my pin tweet in Twitter handle, that I tend to buy when market falls, and around that time, whatever opportunities I get, I also try to figure out margin expansion as well as the sales growth, the top line growth and the bottom line growth. And then I actually value the cash flow statement, the information that is dished out from the cash flow statement, because sometimes a company may actually be showing a lot of net profit and all that, but its cash management is very bad, and that actually makes them go for a hiccup, and that causes a lot of disturbance in price movement as well. Personally, it's an honest confession. I definitely do time my entry using technicals, but I do not buy stocks on the basis of technicals only. No, I don't do that. Although I have become, as I said, I have now become known as a card-carrying technical analyst, but I spend 20% of the time there. 80% of the time is actually to fish for stocks that are actually giving me good margin of safety. Like for instance, I used to say for a very long time when ITC was below 200, that time I even got mocked on television live.
I remember, sir.
So that kind of opportunities whenever you get. Otherwise, as you said that, as people have said that. If there is a growth opportunity, like I said, that anything that can replace plastic in an environment friendly way, definitely I would look for such opportunities. Other than that, I avoid, as I said, I do not invest in those companies. Telecom, media, brokerage. Brokerage these days is simply non-existent. And the other fourth one, as I mentioned, was what? Airlines. I don't invest in them because they don't make money for shareholders. That's the kind of thing. So if I do get opportunity where, see, some people, some of you are very much inclined towards investing in MNC companies, but look at Whirlpool. I mean, it's a great MNC. It's one of the multi-baggers that I made. And on Money Control, I was abused when I recommended Whirlpool initially at 42 and then again at 22. These were the prices I bought it, and it went down to a price of 14. It was such that Anuj Singhal had to direct Money Control to obliterate those comments. That was such abusive language. But that Whirlpool and today's Whirlpool are different. So do not just go for blanket call like MNCs will be good or say commodities will be good or something. But apart from those four industries, I have no faith, absolutely zero faith in any form of cryptocurrency for the simple reason it undermines state power. It is the state that has monopoly in its currency issuance. If cryptocurrency is accepted over the world, then state power actually suffers, and no state power will ever accept this, be it United States government, be it Indian government, any. That's why RBI now is much more vocal. It now wants to say that if it is banned, it's so much the better. It will actually create problems for monetary policy formulation and all that. I do believe that this is something out of nothing. And this, I personally have told all my clients that please do not ask for any crypto guidance because I don't believe in that. That's it. Here I conclude.
Yeah, thank you being so eloquent, sir. And I would further request 30 seconds for your view on jewel sector. One of our audiences has asked me in DM, and then we move on to Rishi to know his views or maybe anything he has to add on today's topic as he has been listening quite a while. Yeah, Rajat, sir.
No, it is on what?
Sir, jewelry sector, he was asking.
Jewelry sector, I do not track, so I would not be able to comment so much on that. But only thing is that there lots of companies are available, but generally I would prefer to look at Titan, but not at current prices. I believe hallmarking jewelry in India, that is actually a very good thing. But I really don't think that Titan or for that matter any jewelry stock I would buy without a real good margin of safety. I mean, I have seen one thing in my 30 years of market investing, investing in the markets, that is, if you have patience, then you will get your opportunity. Patience is the greatest quality that an investor can aspire for. In fact, the longest serving investor from who had seen 1929 crash and lived to see at least a part of the tech bull run, when he was asked, if you do not have any quality, then which quality you must emphasize for an investor, which is a must if there is no other quality? He said patience, and apply that patience, reap the fruits of that patience when stocks are at a level low prices. I mean, nobody. That's a winning combination if you have. That's
Right,
it.
sir. Excellent, sir. So, Rishi, over to you.
Always, it's a pleasure to listen, Rajat. Rajat, I'm Rishi. I'm good friend of Mr. Chandravardhan Desai, and actually, he is always very praiseful about you. So, I remember all the calls you used to give us. So,
Convey my
and your
regards
charts.
to
Sure.
CVD. Convey my regards to
Definitely.
Mr. Desai.
Yes, sir. And why don't you come and have a tea with us? I mean, one day I'll take your number and we'll have a tea together. So, and it's always I used to when I was like, let's see, always we used to get your emails and your charts and your recommendation, and around about in 2098, 96, 98 to 2000, we used to get all your recommendation. It was wonderful. So it's always very good. You always have that cup and saucer design. I remember कि there's a cup and saucer pattern, and मैं बोला ये क्या है? बोलते हैं नहीं, this is like a breakout of multi years. I remember those things. So it's a very wonderful always talking about you and listening to you, Dada. So coming back to the total subject, मैं आपको एक overall economy के बारे में बता सकता हूँ. What I feel that the worst is behind us. The inflation, the worst of the inflation is behind us. The worst of the FII selling is behind us. And the best part about all this mayhem which has happened, India has, emerged more stronger. $31 billion का selling. मतलब just imagine $31 billion का selling FII आया और बेच के गया because उसको US में unwind करना था because US का interest rate बढ़ रहा था, so they have to basically unwind their positions and they have to return back the capital back to the USA. So $31 billion of concentrated selling, and you see the Indian market was able to absorb. Now just imagine why a trader always always trade in Nifty, because Nifty is the most liquid instrument. वहाँ पर cost of trade बहुत कम होता है, वो फड़ नहीं लगती है, तुरंत हो जाता है. That is the why. Now the market of India, Indian market has emerged to be one of the most liquid market. कि एक दिन में FII को 7,000 करोड़ का माल बेचना है तो वो बटन दबाता है, 7,000 करोड़ का माल बेचा with the least impact cost, and it was able to sell that 7,000 crore in one single day, and they have actually sold $31 billion of their what you call their foreign trades and everything. And uske baad bhi Indian market has outperformed Dow Jones, Indian market has outperformed Nasdaq, Indian market has outperformed European indices, Indian market has outperformed the Korean indices. So this is the most important thing. And secondly, क्या होता है ना, क्राइसिस होती है तभी क्राइसिस मैनेजमेंट होता है. अब 9.5%, 10% का इन्फ्लेशन इज देयर. नाउ व्हाट हैपन, EU ने आज क्या किया? आज नाउ दे आर पिचिंग कि भैया सैंक्शन हटाओ रशिया से. दिस इज अभी लेटेस्ट न्यूज है. सैंक्शन हटाओ रशिया से, क्योंकि रशिया पे सैंक्शन लगाएंगे तो एनर्जी कॉस्ट बढ़ रही है, एनर्जी कॉस्ट बढ़ती है तो हम लोग को इन्फ्लेशन 9% है, हम लोग नहीं दे पा रहे. वहां पर डिलिक्वेंसीज बढ़ रही है, बेड डेब्ट्स बढ़ रहे हैं, थिंग्स आर लुकिंग बैड. नाउ पीपल आर स्पेंडिंग मोर ऑन द एसेंशियल रादर देन डिस्क्रिशनरी गुड्स. उनका डिस्क्रिशनरी स्पेंडिंग पावर एकदम कम हो गया है, उनके रेंट्स बढ़ गए हैं. €1 था सर लास्ट ईयर, उनका पेट्रोल का प्राइस आज €2 के ऊपर हो गया है. पेट्रोल का प्राइस, एनीबडी कैन वेरीफाई दिस फैक्ट. सो उनके लिए इन्फ्लेशन हैज वेरी हार्ड हिटिंग एंड एक्चुअली हिट एकदम बिलो द बेल्ट, जिसको अपने बोल सकते हैं. फूड पे आ गया, फ्यूल पे आ गया, रेंट पे आ गया, एनर्जी पे आ गया. वहां पर एनर्जी का गैस के प्राइसेस 7 टाइम्स बढ़ गए, 7 टाइम्स. यस, हम लोग यहाँ पर 20-30 हो जाता है तो यहाँ पर वो लगा देते, बट वहाँ 7 टाइम्स बढ़ा है. So you can imagine the situation of a European guy and an American people who are struggling right now. And they are having a 9.5% inflation. 9.5% inflation usually वो African countries के साथ होता था. This is the first time we are seeing those kind of inflation. At least मैं अपनी life में first time दे रहा. I am 42-year-old. So this is how the thing has happened. Our currency is the least depreciated against the dollar if you compare with the major currency, and we are हम लोग का इन्फ्लेशन भी काफी कंट्रोल में है, and in fact it's in the downward trajectory as per the RBI. RBI has given the statement that we have actually peaked out our inflation. So that is the most important thing. Our NPAs are going down. Our credit card delinquencies are the lowest in the last 4 years. And all these things are happening अभी ये सारे डेटा अभी लास्ट 1-2 महीने के ही हैं. सिर्फ डोमेस्टिक इनफ्लोज जैसे गुरमीत जी बता रहे थे hasn't gone down. The domestic flows has been good, and they were largely able to counter the FII selling. So आप जस्ट सोचो, जिस दिन FII की सेलिंग खत्म हो जाएगी या जब भी ट्रिकल डाउन हुई है, जिस दिन FII वापस सेलिंग पे बाइंग पे आएंगे और डोमेस्टिक का जो एक रेगुलर इनफ्लो आने लग गया है, जो आता रहता है, वो दोनों आएगा, तो there will be a double engine which is going to boost the stock market. Then we have the one of the highest GDP to tax collection. I think the tax collection gone to 12% of the GDP, which is one of the highest. So हमारे fiscal deficit situation is in a much better condition. Or with the falling of the crude and the falling of this and the ebbing of this FII outflows, मुझे लगता है कि हमारा जो CAD का सिचुएशन है वो भी काफी बेटर हो जाएगा. So basically I think we are much comfortable than any other countries. हमारे external debts भी 20% है to the GDP, which is one of the lowest when you compare to the $1 trillion economy. So all this thing, if you compare, I think that we are doing a good work. We have managed this crisis very well. और अब मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि वहां पर बहुत बड़ा एक रिसेशन आ रहा है यूरोप में, अमेरिका में. तो द कंसर्न विल बी शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम इन्फ्लेशन टू द ग्रोथ. अगेन द ग्रोथ पे आएगा तो ऑब्वियसली दे विल स्टार्ट प्रिंटिंग नोट्स, दे विल स्टार्ट गिविंग स्टिमुलस, दे विल उनका जो वो होगा वो ईज हो जाएगा, बेस इफेक्ट किक इन हो जाएगा नवंबर से. तो इन्फ्लेशन विल बी ऑल्सो बी लाइक काफी नीचे आएंगे. कमोडिटीज के प्राइसेस घटे हुए हैं, क्रूड के प्राइस घट रहे हैं, फूड प्राइसेस भी लास्ट एक 15-20 दिन में एक ऑलमोस्ट 25% घट गए हैं. कॉर्न, व्हीट, सबके प्राइसेस. सो कोल का प्राइसेस आप देख लो. दिस इज द फर्स्ट टाइम की कुकिंग कोल हैज गॉन डाउन बिलो द नॉर्मल कोल्स. सो ये सारी चीजें हो रही है, एंड ये सारी चीजें हमारे आंखों के सामने हो रही है. सो आई थिंक द वर्स्ट इज बिहाइंड अस. अब देखिए 100, 200, 500 पॉइंट कोई नहीं बोल सकता है, वो कोई भी प्रेडिक्ट नहीं कर सकता, बट लार्जली the worst is behind us. This is a good time to invest. अगर आपके पास 100 रुपया है तो आप 20 रुपया डाल दो, थोड़ी देर और वेट करो, फिर 20 रुपया डालो, आपको जैसे सूट करे. बट मेरा यही है कि नाउ दिस इज द टाइम टू बेट ऑन द इंडियन मार्केट. इंडियन मार्केट हैज एक्चुअली relatively emerged unscathed from this global situation. काफी better managed है, काफी thing है. We haven't not given mindless subsidies, we haven't given mindless doles, we haven't gone as a Sri Lankan way, neither we are going as a Bangladeshi way. We are doing much better. हमारे इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल में, फूड प्राइसेस कंट्रोल में है, हमारी सोइंग अच्छी आ रही है, मानसून ठीक है. नथिंग टू वरी. ऑल मेजर और सारे नेगेटिव फैक्टर्स अब पॉजिटिव में कन्वर्ट हो रहे हैं. ऑल द हेडविंड्स हैव बीन कन्वर्टिंग इनटू द टेलविंड. जस्ट इमेजिन द हाई क्रूड प्राइसेस, हाई इंटरेस्ट प्राइसेस. इफ दे स्टार्ट फॉलिंग, they will become a tailwind. So all this low commodity prices, again it's a tailwind for our India. So all these things are coming down and we are doing good. और अब ये स्टिमुलस स्टार्ट होगा तो ऑब्वियसली दैट मनी विल कम टू द इंडिया मोर, क्योंकि वो मनी, स्मार्ट मनी ऑलवेज फाइंड अ बेटर डेस्टिनेशन. जैसे आप लोग अगर स्मार्ट, जैसे अभी आपने गुरमीत जी ने बोला कि उनका एक फिल्टर होता है और वो अच्छे शेयर्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं जिसमें 4 साल में वो डबल हो जाती है टॉप लाइन. तो भैया वो जो स्मार्ट मनी यूएस में प्रिंट होगा वो भी एक ऐसी इकोनॉमी में आएगा जहाँ पे इकोनॉमी डबल हो रही है 5-6 साल में. So obviously for that thing, one of the economy will be India because China is slowing down. So India is the only potential economy which is left, which is going to come out, and we have a political stability for next 5-6 years. सब कुछ जो रेसिपी फॉर द एकदम परफेक्ट रेसिपी है वो क्रिएट हो रही है इंडिया में. तो मुझे नहीं लगता है कुछ भी गलत होने वाला है. और यहाँ से ऑल नेगेटिव फैक्टर हैज बीन फैक्टर इन द मार्केट. पॉजिटिव फैक्टर अभी तक कुछ भी फैक्टर इन नहीं हुआ. सो वी नीड टू सी दैट थिंग, और मुझे लगता है कि यहाँ से we should take a very positive view on the market. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Rishi, and it was really nice knowing different view from the speakers. But few things are coming out from all of them. That staying the course is very important, and one has to look for value and keeping margin of safety in mind. And of course, India, we are very long on India, and definitely will be doing good. So, Ravindra, before coming to Geo, I asked Ravindra if we have any questions from our panelists, Gurmeet sir, Rajat sir, or maybe others. So, Geo, we take your question after Ravindra. Ravindra, over to you.
Yeah, I don't have any question, but I have few points to add. Like we were talking about extreme, I agree that I don't think there would be extremely concern in the Indian market for few factors. We were talking about fund flows. The mutual fund I remember is sitting on 13 to 14% kind of cash balance right now, the equity and the hybrid combined. So they have ample opportunity even after deploying such a huge amount to counter the trade from FII. They still have that appetite to absorb few more months of selling if that comes from FII. That's the first point. The second point is in last 30-40 years, if I remember well, there were only 2-3 years globally when you had drawdown on the equity and the debt market combined together in the same year, and it was followed with a huge upside on the equity market after each time. It was earlier in 2008, then I guess it was in 2000 time. So this year till June 22, we have a significant drawdown in the US and the developed market in debt and equity both at the same time. So we are preparing a case that calendar year 2023 would be very good for equity and debt market. Other point mentioned by Tanul is that fund will flow towards wherever there is growth opportunity available. So if India can offer 6% growth with 6% inflation, that's about 12-13% kind of nominal growth. On top of that, if the leaders in the sector or the companies which are featuring in the Nifty 50 can grow at 1-2% basis point extra, and they can show some kind of leverage, you will achieve that 15% kind of growth in profitability. That is good enough for the fund flow to reverse to the Indian side, and this always happen. Say last year there were huge drawdown in the Brazilian market, and there was huge inflow in the Indian market. This has reversed in last 10-12 months. We are seeing drawdown in the Indian markets, and the fund are flowing back to the Brazilian markets. Even if we see the EPS growth of both the market, Indian market EPS growth for next 2 years is far higher. Let it rest aside that Indian valuation is also much higher than the Brazilian market. So I think that this fund flow, which has reversed in last 12 months, at some point of time it will again reverse and fund will move back to India. The only problem for the Indian market, as everyone also pointed out, that commodity inflation, we are now looking at deflation, and might be US will be staring at recession for next year. The only joker in the pack, as I always call, is now oil. And the problem there is we don't know how Russia will react come September, October. Because Putin is he's a 19th century guy. He take war as it is, as war should be in a 19th century. He's a 19th century guy. He's not a European guy who think about positioning and how the media think about you. He will think about where he can get the maximum leverage. And he will get maximum leverage in winter time by turning the tap off for the gas to the German and other European country. And that's the only reason I think right now the coal and other energy based commodity, they haven't cooled off. Coal price still very high in the international market. So that gives a signal that come winter, European country will again fall back to coal and nuclear power. They will restart their coal and nuclear power plant. So only joker left in the pack is the oil. And oil, if Putin decide to do something in September, October, then oil will create a havoc on the Indian market. Otherwise, we are well placed here. We will be doing that 6% kind of GDP growth, 6% kind of inflation, and that will be good enough for us to achieve that 14-15% kind of EPS growth. Yeah, that's the only point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Ravi. Gio, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
सबको नमस्कार। आयोजकों को विशेष धन्यवाद। वो सबको अपनी मन की बात कहने के लिए स्पेस देते हैं और जो सभी स्पीकर्स आते हैं बड़ा अच्छे से मार्केट के बारे में बताते हैं, लेकिन मेरे जैसे व्यक्ति को ज़्यादा समझ में नहीं आता है क्योंकि वो अंग्रेजी कम आती है। मेरा प्रश्न है कि एज ए स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर जो 1000 लाख रुपए में इन्वेस्ट करता है, यहाँ पे जो भी कंपनियां मार्केट में लिस्टेड रहती है वो भी सब पैसा बनाने के लिए है, एज ए ऑपरेटर कहें या कैसे भी कहें, और मैं एज ए इन्वेस्टर भी पैसा कमाने के लिए इन्वेस्ट करना चाहता हूँ। तो क्या चीज इस मार्केट में एक स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर को ध्यान रखना चाहिए, ये मेरा प्रश्न है।
गुरमीत सर,
ऋषि भाई बोलिए, आप बोलिए पहले प्लीज।
नहीं, मैं जियो साहब को यही बोल रहा हूँ कि जो छोटा अमाउंट है उसमें आप डायरेक्ट मार्केट में मत जाओ। इक्विटी में डायरेक्ट नहीं जाना चाहिए। आई फील दैट इन्वेस्टर्स को, जैसे जिसके अमाउंट बहुत छोटा हो तो उसको फिर क्या होता है, वो टेम्पटेड हो जाता है पेनी स्टॉक में, स्मॉल कैप में, मिड कैप में डालने में। इट्स बेटर आप म्यूचुअल फंड के रूट से जाओ, रेगुलरली इन्वेस्ट कीजिए, आपका एक बड़ा कॉर्पस हो जाता है। अगर सपोज कीजिए आपके 2 बच्चे हैं तो आप एक म्यूचुअल फंड को एक तीसरा बच्चा बना के रखिए। जितना आप 2 बच्चे में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं उतना का उतना पैसा, जैसे आपने एक बच्चे पे आप सपोज कीजिए 1 साल पे 1 लाख रुपया खर्चा करते हो, तो और 2 बच्चों पे 2 लाख रुपया खर्चा करते हो, तो 1 लाख रुपया आप ये सोचिए कि म्यूचुअल फंड आपका तीसरा बच्चा है और आप उसमें डाल रहे हो। और हर साल आप जितना आप अपने बच्चों पे किए हो 15 साल 20 साल तक खर्चा, उतना का उतना पैसा आप म्यूचुअल फंड में डालिए। वो आपका तीसरा बच्चा जो है वो आपका बुढ़ापा का सहारा रहेगा। फर्स्ट 2 का मैं गारंटी नहीं ले सकता हूँ, लेकिन तीसरा जो बच्चा होगा म्यूचुअल फंड का, वो आपके बुढ़ापे का मतलब सहारा रहेगा। दिस इज व्हाट आई कैन से। सो प्लीज ट्रीट इक्विटी एज अ मोड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, नॉट एज अ गैम्बलिंग थिंग। उसको आप इन्वेस्ट कीजिए, उसको म्यूचुअल फंड के थ्रू जाइए। लेट द राइट पीपल मैनेज योर फंड, लेट द राइट पर्सन मैनेज योर फंड। अच्छे कोई भी बढ़िया म्यूचुअल फंड जिसका ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड अच्छा हो, डाइवर्सिफाइड हो, लार्ज कैप हो प्रेफरेबली, दे आर द, आपको 14 से 15% का रिटर्न मिल जाएगा ऑन एन एवरेज। लास्ट 10 साल में आप देख लो, वो 14-15% का रिटर्न मिलता है, एंड दैट इज एनफ। आई थिंक दैट रिटर्न विल बी मच अहेड ऑफ एनी एक्सपेक्टेशन। उससे ज़्यादा रिटर्न अगर आता भी है तो गड़बड़ हो जाता है, उससे कम आता है तो भी गड़बड़ होता है। तो आई थिंक ऑन एन एवरेज उतना आ जाता है तो आपका एकदम लाइफ सेट है। थैंक यू।
थैंक्स ऋषि।
जियो,
गुरमीत सर, मैं
एक बात
आपसे गुरमीत सर रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा हिंदी में बताइएगा, क्योंकि जियो जी रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं कि और काफी हमारे ऐसे होते हैं जो हिंदी में ज्यादा कंफर्टेबल है।
मैं हिंदी में बता देता हूँ। आई थिंक ऋषि जी ने अच्छी बात बोली। आप देखिए, अगर छोटा अमाउंट आप लगाना चाहते हैं और अगर महीने का कुछ एक इन्वेस्ट करना चाहते हैं, कोई भी अमाउंट कोई मेरे हिसाब से मायने नहीं रखता है। आप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, बहुत अच्छी बात है। तो पहले मैं आपको बधाई दूंगा कि आप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि आधे लोग एनालिसिस करते रह जाते हैं, स्टार्ट नहीं कर पाते हैं। आप इसमें ना 2 क्राइटेरिया हैं। एक, अगर हमारी नॉलेज लिमिटेड है तो जैसा ऋषि ने बोला, आप एक इंडेक्स फंड से स्टार्ट कर लीजिए। आप देखिए, सेंसेक्स 100 का आज 53,000 है। ये दिखने में 530 गुना है, बट जो रिटर्न है वो 12-13% के आसपास है, जो कि अभी वो रविंद्र जी भी बोल रहे थे, हमारी नॉमिनल जीडीपी ग्रोथ को मैच करता है। मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि चाहे वॉर हो, चाहे कुछ भी हो, इंडिया की नॉमिनल जीडीपी ग्रोथ डबल डिजिट में रहेगी। और 1:1 अगर आप जीडीपी और मार्केट कैप, जितना इकोनॉमी बढ़ती है उतना मार्केट कैप का रेशियो होता है, ऐसे हम वॉरेन बफेट इंडिकेटर भी बोलते हैं। तो इंडेक्स फंड से आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं, और अमाउंट अगर थोड़ा ज़्यादा है तो साथ में 1-2 फंड्स और ले सकते हैं। साथ-साथ आप क्या करिए, आप अपने आप को भी तैयार करिए। देखिए क्या है, स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट के लिए म्यूचुअल फंड अच्छा है। आप बाज़ार में एंटर कर रहे हैं, एक प्रोफेशनल फंड मैनेजर आपके पैसे मैनेज कर रहा है, उसके पास एक रिसर्च टीम है। आप साथ-साथ अपनी भी तैयारी करिए। आप कुछ एक, मान लीजिए आप बैंक में काम करते हैं, आप किसी आईटी सेक्टर में काम करते हैं, या आप किसी एफएमसीजी कंपनी से लिंक्ड हैं। आप अपने सर्कल में जो आपका स्ट्रेंथ है उस पे थोड़ा रिसर्च शुरू करिए। अब जैसे अगर आप मान लीजिए बैंकर है, मैं बैंक के बैकग्राउंड से हूँ, तो मेरा हमेशा से एक रुझान जिसे कहते हैं बैंक्स की तरफ रहा है। तो अभी एक ना बहुत अच्छी रिपोर्ट आई है, एक्सिस बैंक की एनुअल रिपोर्ट आई है, ओपनिंग टू अ वर्ल्ड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी। न्यू वर्ल्ड जो इंडिया का, जो नया इंडिया बन रहा है, इसमें क्या क्या अपॉर्चुनिटी आ रही है। उसमें वो यूपीआई की बात कर रहा है, उसमें वो 19 अलग अलग प्रोजेक्ट्स, अमिताभ चौधरी जी जो एक्सिस बैंक के सीईओ हैं, बात कर रहे हैं कैसे बैंकिंग चेंज होने वाला है। अगर आप आईटी के हैं तो आप एक टीसीएस की अच्छी रिपोर्ट पढ़ सकते हैं। एनुअल रिपोर्ट एक बहुत अच्छा जरिया है कंपनी के बारे में थोड़ा पढ़ने का। उसमें ना एक मैनेजमेंट कमेंट्री होती है 2 या 3 पन्नों की, काफ़ी सरल भाषा में होती है। आप चाहें तो उसके ना बहुत सारे मैं आपको एक पोर्टल बताऊंगा, ट्रेंड लाइन करके एक पोर्टल है, उसमें ना ब्रोकरेज रिपोर्ट्स फ्री आती हैं। तो उसमें जैसे आईसीआईसीआई और मोतीलाल वगैरह की रिपोर्ट्स आती हैं, वो बड़े ही अच्छी सिंपल उसमें उस रिपोर्ट का सिनॉप्सिस भी आपको देती हैं। तो अगर आप आईटी सेक्टर के बारे में पढ़ना चाहते हैं तो टीसीएस की एक बहुत अच्छी रिपोर्ट है और उसका टाइटल है इनोवेटिंग फॉर ग्रेटर फ्यूचर। तो मैं बाजार में 18-20 साल से हूँ। मैं ऋषि जी को भी बताना चाहूँगा, मैं पिछले 2 साल में मैं इतने प्रमोटर्स से मिला हूँ जो एक ऑप्टिमिज्म है, ओनर का ऑप्टिमिज्म है। आप देखिए फार्मा कंपनी में आप देखेंगे तो डिवीज, लॉरस, ये लोग 2-2, 3-3 हजार करोड़ की कैपेक्स कर रहे हैं। आप सीमेंट में देखेंगे तो लगभग हर कंपनी कैपेसिटी जो है अपनी फैक्ट्री बढ़ा रही है, कैपेसिटी बढ़ा रही है। आप बैंक में बात करेंगे तो डिजिटल होने के बावजूद एचडीएफसी बैंक बोल रहा है मैं 1000 ब्रांचेस और खोलूंगा। अभी किसी ने ज्वेलरी की बात की, रजत जी चले गए, टाइटन ने तनिष्क ने 19 स्टोर खोले हैं पिछले क्वार्टर। आप किसी भी सेक्टर में जाएंगे, आपको बहुत टाइम बाद, हम इसे ना कैपिटल केपेक्स बोलते हैं, कैपिटल एक्सपेंशन बोलते हैं इसे, बहुत टाइम बाद कंपनी में हमें एक एक्सपेंशन देखने को मिल रहा है। और जब कोई भी बिजनेसमैन अगर 2, 5, 10 हजार करोड़ लगा के एक्सपैंड कर रहा है तो वो 1-2 क्वार्टर का नहीं सोच रहा है, वो अगले 5 साल 10 साल का सोच रहा है। तो मेरा ये मानना है कि ये डेकेड इंडिया के लिए बहुत अच्छा है। तो आप स्टार्ट एक अच्छे इंडेक्स फंड से करिए, साथ साथ अपनी नॉलेज बढ़ाते जाइए, पढ़ते जाइए कुछ। और देखिए वॉरेन बफेट है, आज उसकी 45 100 में से 45 रुपए उसने एक स्टॉक में लगाए हैं। वो जब तक उसको टेक्नोलॉजी समझ में नहीं आ रहा था, नहीं समझ में आ रहा था, एक बार बिजनेस समझ में आ गया तो उनको समझ में आ गया। तो आप साथ साथ अपने आप को तैयार करिए। ये लंबी जर्नी है, ये 15, 20, 25 साल की जर्नी है। मैं हमेशा बोलता हूँ मैराथन है। आप अपने आप को तैयार करिए, जितना आप तैयार होते जाएंगे ना उतना आपका कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ता जाएगा। अब फिर आप धीरे धीरे म्यूचुअल फंड से डायरेक्ट शेयर्स में माइग्रेट करते जाएंगे। बिना रिसर्च करे, बिना अच्छे से कंपनी को समझे निवेश मत करिए। किसी के कहने पे, चाहे मैं बोलूं, चाहे व्हाट्सएप पे कोई मैसेज आए या कोई यूट्यूब पे वीडियो डाले, बिल्कुल भी इन्वेस्ट मत करिए। आपको जो चीज समझ में आ जाइए, अच्छे से आ जाए, उसमें निवेश करिए।
फैक्ट फाइंडर
Yeah, hi.
जी आप
Sorry, Prince.
या गो अहेड।
Yeah, so I'll just be very quick about it. So just a few things I wanted to correct in terms of data that was shared by several speakers. But the question I haven't still as yet got an answer for the question is what is the right implied valuation for companies that some of the speakers like Gurmeet and Rajat spoke about, because at the end of the day, buying a good business is great, but you can't, if you pay the wrong price, it's bad. And several of the good businesses in India trade at implied long-term growth. When I say long-term, I'm talking about 10-year growth of between 35 to 40%, because of the PE multiples that they actually have, and and those companies have not really delivered on those numbers. So anyway, coming back to some important data points, let's look at agri data points. India's rains have been damn good. Okay, we are about 23% higher than what it was the same time last year. In fact, in terms of the surplus, we are at 24%. This is as of 10th of July. But the most important point is not about the rain. It's about the dispersion of rain and the actual sowing of kharif crops. In fact, the sowing of kharif crops today is 10% lower than what it was last year. And the reason
I think we lost him. So in the meantime,
संजू जी को
हाँ संजू जी, you please ask your question as it's getting late and I guess Gurmeet sir would also be getting late. Yeah, Sanju ji, please ask.
Yeah, thank you. I have a specific question on the media sector. I've been attending a couple of spaces events, and most of the speakers or the event organizers, they are not very optimistic about the media sector. So I am kind of lost. Why? I mean, so much of investments are happening. Such fantastic digital assets of franchises are getting created in India, but why are we as investors are not optimistic on that sector? What are we seeing? I'm not able to see that. So if Mr. Gurmeet can kind of help me.
Sir, media sector you said?
Yeah.
अच्छा, तो सर आई थिंक मीडिया अगेन ना इज अ वेरी काफी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सेक्टर है. मीडिया में देर आर वेरियस सेगमेंट्स. सो फॉर एग्जांपल द फर्स्ट सेगमेंट इज वेयर द चैनल्स आर राइट, व्हिच इज द ब्रॉडकास्टिंग सेगमेंट. ये थोड़ा सा ना इसमें काफी कैपिटल लगता है. यू हैव टू बिड फॉर राइट्स. अगर आपका ओटीटी है तो आप कंटेंट खरीदते हो, तो बड़ा कैपिटल इंटेंसिव बिजनेस. अगर मैं कंपेयर करूं तो दिस इज लाइक टेलीकॉम और दिस इज लाइक हॉस्पिटल बिजनेस. आपको कंटेंट पे स्पेंड करना पड़ता है and then you start monetizing that content. So plus इंडिया में unfortunately क्या हुआ, गवर्नेंस इश्यूज आ गए. Z had its issues with related party transactions with Dish TV etc. Sun TV had a political affiliation. तो इन्वेस्टर का जो एक्सपीरियंस रहा वो थोड़ा सा खराब हो गया. लेकिन within media there are few segments which are likely to become very disruptive. तो एक इसका सब सेगमेंट है जो म्यूजिक स्ट्रीमिंग है राइट. तो जैसे कंपनीज लाइक सारेगामा है जिन्होंने क्या किया कि 1.5 लाख से ऊपर गानों को डिजिटाइज कर दिया राइट. सो व्हेनेवर यू प्ले दैट सॉन्ग ऑन अ यूट्यूब या अमेजोन पे तो उसको उसका एक फी मिलता है. उन्होंने एक अपना मूवी बैनर भी बनाया, योडली फिल्म्स, जो कि छोटी शॉर्ट मूवीज बनाता है, लो बजट मूवीज और सीरियल्स और सीरीज बनाता है. तो सारेगामा ने ये चेंज किया. शिमारू नहीं कर पाए, बाकी लोग नहीं कर पाए इतने अच्छे से, एंड सारेगामा हैज डन वेरी वेल इन लास्ट ईयर. पर बहुत छोटी कंपनी है. मैं डिस्क्लेमर देना चाहूंगा कि स्टॉक रिकमेंडेशन नहीं है, मैंने सिर्फ एग्जांपल के तौर पे बात करी है. तो सारेगामा ने काफी अच्छा किया और अगर आगे वो और इनोवेट कर पाए तो अच्छा होगा. दूसरा, मीडिया में प्रॉब्लम क्या आ रहा है, क्योंकि अगर जब भी रिसेशन आता है या स्लो डाउन आता है, आपका डिस्क्रिशनरी एक्सपेंडिचर कम हो जाता है. तो आपका एडवर्टाइजमेंट बजट पे सबसे पहले कट लगता है, ट्रैवल और एडवर्टाइजमेंट पे. तो अगर आपने अभी पीवीआर का भी अपडेट देखा हो क्वार्टर का, उनका एड रेवेन्यू थोड़ा सा डिप हुआ है, जबकि मल्टीप्लेक्सेस में एडवर्टाइजमेंट रेवेन्यू का इतना बड़ा प्रोपोर्शन नहीं होता है. तो क्योंकि एडवर्टाइजमेंट मेन रेवेन्यू सोर्स है, तो वहाँ पे थोड़ा सा मार्केट को लगता है कि थोड़ा सा आएगा. और अभी क्या हो रहा है कि इतना महंगा हो गया है टीवी में एडवर्टाइजमेंट देना कि पीपल हैव आल्सो स्टार्टेड रिसोर्टिंग टू डिजिटल चैनल. अभी अगर आप देखेंगे, आज हम 11 बजे, अभी ये सेशन चल रहा है, हम सबका स्क्रीन टाइम आज का 7-8 घंटा होगा. तो हम 8 घंटा मोबाइल फोन पे हैं वर्सेस वी आर नॉट 8 आवर्स ऑन द टेलीविजन राइट. तो देयर आर सम कंपनीज, जैसे एक एफएल इंडिया एक कंपनी है. तो अगर आप कभी मनी कंट्रोल खोलते हैं या कुछ भी खोलते हैं, आपको जो एड्स दिखता है उसका प्लेसमेंट एफएल इंडिया करता है. तो उनका एक प्रोप्राइटरी मॉडल है जो इंटरेक्शन बेस्ड चार्ज करता है. दे डोंट चार्ज फीस लाइक दैट. वो नंबर ऑफ क्लिक्स पे, नंबर ऑफ इंटरेक्शन पे करते हैं. वी हैव एन अमेजिंग मॉडल राइट. आप अमेजॉन देखेंगे, आज उनका एडवर्टाइजमेंट रेवेन्यू जो है इज वन ऑफ द मेन स्ट्रीम राइट. आप हैरान हो जाएंगे, अमेजॉन इंडिया का सबसे बड़ा एडवर्टाइजमेंट क्लाइंट जो है वो सिटी बैंक है, जिसका प्रोडक्ट अमेजॉन पे लिस्टेड नहीं है. तो एडवर्टाइजमेंट वहां जा रहा है जहां पे अब ट्रैफिक जा रहा है राइट. तो बड़ा चेंज आ रहा है सेक्टर में, डिस्ट्रप्शन इतना हो रहा है कि आप उस पर बहुत लंबा व्यू लेना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल हो जाएगा. तो सिलेक्टिवली कुछ पॉकेट्स हैं मीडिया में जो काफी अच्छे हैं और काफी अट्रैक्टिव हैं, और बट आपको थोड़ा सा केयरफुल रहना है कि आप किस भाव में उसको ले रहे हैं. और एडवर्टाइजमेंट रेवेन्यू, अगर मेन स्ट्रीम एडवर्टाइजमेंट रेवेन्यू बहुत बड़ा पार्ट है तो वो रिस्क हो सकता है. सिमिलरली अगर आप मूवी प्रोडक्शन में है और मान लीजिए वो मूवी नहीं अच्छा करती है और आपका एक्सपेंडिचर हो जाता है, तो ये थोड़ा सा हाई रिस्क हाई रिवॉर्ड गेम है. बट डिजिटल मीडिया जो है, जिसमें मैंने कुछ आपको उदाहरण दिया, ऐसे बहुत सारी कंपनीज स्पेस में है, वहाँ पे व्यू काफी कंस्ट्रक्टिव है और मुझे लगता है कि काफी डिस्ट्रप्शन आपको देखने को मिलेगा.
Okay. Thanks, Atul.
Thank you, Gurmeet sir. Ravindra, you have raised your hand in between. Anything you want to add, or shall we?
Prince, I will sign off. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, sir. It is always nice to have you on spaces, and our audiences really cherish asking questions from you. Thank you, sir.
No, pleasure. And I have just one last line to say, everyone. देखिए, I always, there's a very famous saying, मार्केट हमेशा दो व्यूज से बनता है, एक पेसिमिस्ट व्यू से, एक ऑप्टिमिस्ट व्यू से. तो एक दूसरे के व्यूज को रिस्पेक्ट करिए. ये मैं देखता हूँ ट्विटर पे सब नाराज हो जाते हैं एक दूसरे से अगर कोई आपके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से अग्री नहीं करता है. इसमें नाराज होने की जरूरत नहीं है, इसलिए मार्केट कोई बेच रहा है तो कोई खरीद रहा है. मेरा एक्सपीरियंस ये रहा है कि अगर आप इक्विटी इन्वेस्टर हैं, बाय नेचर यू हैव टू बी ऑप्टिमिस्टिक. अगर आप पेसिमिस्टिक हैं तो आप फिक्स इनकम करिए, क्योंकि अगर आपका फ्रेम ऑफ माइंड ऑप्टिमिस्टिक नहीं है, सी इक्विटी इज अबाउट फ्यूचर, किसी को नहीं पता है, राइट. बट अगर आपका व्यू हमेशा पेसिमिज्म आता है कि आज वॉर हो गया, आज हाय तौबा हो गई, कल कुछ हो जाएगा, सो इंडिया में 30 साल में जो कुछ गलत होना था हुआ है, right? So whatever has happened is still we are doing what we are doing. So be optimistic and always remember the pessimist will sound intelligent. बहुत अच्छा कोट है ये, मेरी टीममेट है प्रज्ञा, उसने मुझे बोला था, the pessimist will sound intelligent, the optimist will always make money. तो ये बात हमेशा याद रखिएगा, राइट. और प्रिडिक्शन मत करिए. आपको क्यों प्रिडिक्ट करना है निफ्टी 12 होगा, 16 होगा, 18 होगा. आप सिलेक्शन करिए ना, प्रिडिक्शन पे फोकस मत करिए. आप सिलेक्शन करिए, एसेट एलोकेशन करिए, अच्छी बैलेंस शीट पढ़िए, अच्छी कंपनीज पढ़िए, और उसमें है हर बुल मार्केट, हर बियर मार्केट में कहीं ना कहीं बुल मार्केट है, राइट. सो ऑल द बेस्ट and keep the faith on India, most importantly.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
nice
you.
message in the answer. It was really nice having you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ravi, you were saying something, or shall we sign off for today?
We can conclude. Yeah, I was trying to answer. Fact Finder had some question, but now I guess he is also left.
He was low on battery. He did text before speaking, so I guess there is some issue with his battery. So anyway,
Yeah.
it was really wonderful spaces. Vajpayee ji deserve a hearty congratulations for having so many good people over our spaces, and thank you for the audiences who connected with us today. And that's the beauty of these random spaces, when so many people with diverse views, yet they respect each other's views. And obviously many new listeners, or maybe newbies who have just joined the equity markets, get to learn so much of their experience, that they can inculcate good things about the market, and they can be very, this can really help them in their market journey going ahead, because it is not a one day thing. It is going to last maybe decades. So with this note, I thank each and every one of you who has come to our spaces today. And if you people are liking our spaces, kindly connect with our handle, so that whenever we hold such spaces, you guys can get a notification. And obviously everyone is important. Those who are adding value and those who are listening, both are equally important for our spaces. And if you guys have any feedback, or maybe any person with good domain knowledge, or maybe sector specific knowledge, they can reach out. We can have them over our spaces, and we try to impart education by this means. So it was really nice, and it's getting late. Vajpayee ji, any closing remarks from you or Ravi?
बस प्रिंस जी, आपने काफी अच्छे से कंक्लूजन रिमार्क कर दिए हैं. बस मैं आपको, रविंदर जी को, और सभी जितने भी हमारे बीच में लिसनर्स हैं, इन लोगों को धन्यवाद दूंगा. और आज उम्मीद करता हूं कि काफी हमारे जो है जितने पैनलिस्ट थे, उन्होंने बहुत ही अच्छी जानकारी दी है, और ये शायद उनके इन्वेस्टमेंट की जर्नी के लिए बहुत ही हेल्पफुल होगी. रजत बोस जैसे सर, जो बहुत ही सीनियर एनालिस्ट हैं, एंड हमारे फैक्ट फाइंडर जी, हमारे बीच में गुरमीत जी आए, तो इन सब लोगों ने जिस प्रकार से एक व्यू दिया है, वो व्यू हमारी समझ से सभी लोगों के लिए उपयोगी होना चाहिए. और कविता जी हमारे बीच में है, लेकिन शायद वो अपना व्यू देना नहीं चाहेंगी, तो मैं इस समय सभी लोगों को धन्यवाद देता हूँ, जितने भी लोगों ने हमको सहयोग किया. और आपका प्रिंस जी विशेष रूप से, कि आपने बहुत ही अच्छे से संचालन किया. रविंदर जी, फैक्ट फाइंडर जी, आप सभी लोगों को धन्यवाद देते हुए.
One last thing which I wanted to add before coming to Ravi and Fact Finder. So guys, this spaces is recorded, and when we conclude this spaces, those who have joined late, or maybe those who were not able to hear to our spaces, they can definitely revisit that recording, and that would be available on our handles. So yeah, Fact Finder and Ravi, you two guys were saying something. So anyone of you can go first.
Hey, I was just trying to share my thoughts on few of the questions which fact finders have shared. Definitely, इंडिया में मार्केट जो है ना, इंडियन मार्केट इज बिट binary. There are companies which mutual fund and institutions get attracted, and then there are companies which they doesn't want to touch, be it because of corporate governance, be it because of lack of dominance of those players in the segment. In one way, what fact finder was saying is right, in the sense that the valuation for few companies, they are deeply premium because of one reason is the scarcity premium which the company have. There is no second best play in that segment. So that is one reason why few of the companies get obnoxious kind of valuation. This is kind of scarcity premium which they are attracting. And then there is also one story which I feel is because of the float. If you find few companies where the float is very limited, and large chunk of the shareholding is owned by promoter, and then large chunk is garnered by, say, strong mutual funds and institutions, the float is very limited, and if there is incremental good news, then the price adjustment happens multiple times on those stocks. The best case in point would be Avenue Supermart. There's the If you try to find out which is the next second best stock in the retail chain in India, now nothing will come close to that kind of pedigree, that kind of delivery in terms of performance. So that's the one reason they are at completely out of the roof in terms of valuation. The other thing, I what I gauge fact finder was pointing out. Let tell me if I'm wrong. You were pointing out towards the FMCG premium valuation. Is it right?
It's not just FMCG. Actually, what happens is that because of the FMCG premium valuation, right, and you could include guys like Titan included in that, or Asian Paints, or whatever. I'm just saying because what has happened is the FMCG valuation is so high, and I was just looking at earnings growth, for instance, of Unilever, or I was looking at Home Depot, right, in the US. Home Depot in the US has grown faster than Asian Paints for the last 5 years, with as good return on equity, as good return on invested capital, and far better yield. So I'm just saying that it's not that Indian companies are special. It's that the valuations are so high for FMCG that because FMCG is so high, every other sector is benchmark versus that. Like nowhere else in the world are chemical companies trading at multiples of 35 to 40 times. It doesn't make sense. They're not innovative companies.
Yeah, I agree. For FMCG, I think one of the possible reason is around this factor. Uh, because of last 5 year, 10 year period, or whatever duration we take, the beta of this FMCG companies is 0.3, 0.4. Because of that, if you make something a assumption of a cost of capital or a WACC, which a DCF model will do, that DCF comes to around 8 to 9% only. And now the fundamental thesis on these FMCG companies is that they will grow at 3-4% kind of volume growth, 3-4% kind of inflation, which makes them that the terminal growth itself will be somewhere around that 6-7%. And now you try to gauge this, that if the cost of capital current is 8 or 9%, and the terminal growth is 6-7%, that I guess is the reason why market, or even learned people try to pull the valuation at 50 PE multiple. That's my guess. That's my only guess. The other reason is making it to 50 ka multiple, which means that you have a longevity of the earning for 30-40 years. Given there is only 4-5 companies, 4-5 MNCs, and maybe Marico kind of company, Marico and Dabur. So you can have that visibility of 30-40 years of earning, at least growing at that 6-7%. I'm not justifying the case. I'm just saying my view why it is so. But yeah, some of the companies are premium valuation. Some of the company I continue to hold. But yeah, that's how it is. That's my view on FMCG. But
Yeah,
other companies, I completely agree. Chemicals, so it's I think it is very difficult for any analyst, any investor to understand a particular chemical and how their pricing will develop on international level. Metals, at least you can gauge because you understand the country level demand supply. Chemical commodities, I think it goes beyond normal understanding how we can gauge how the development of different companies who are developing those chemicals across the world would be, and hence the disruption can come anytime. So chemical, I think it's unjustified to have that kind of premium valuation. But FMCG, that's my only 2 cents that I understand they are of this premium valuation. Or also consider this case when you are considering other companies which are at 2025 multiple. At 2025 P multiple, they also generate that 1.25 to 1.5% kind of dividend yield, which is the dividend yield of Nifty 50. And now there is one company which is at 60 ka PE multiple. Take a case of Page Industries. You inverse it, whatever PE is generated, the inverse of that is converted to the cash. So that's one also metric that we should look to see why they are, I guess, at this kind of premium valuation. Fact
Thanks,
Finder, you
Ravindra.
have.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ravi. And yeah, Fact Finder will come to you. We have one last speaker. Let's hear from him first, and then you guys can say your concluding remarks, and we end up our spaces for today. Yeah, Pankaj, go ahead. Pankaj Verma.
या हाय
Yeah.
या मुझे थोड़ा सा ये जानना था, जैसे करंटली मार्केट के अंदर बेस्ट सेक्टर वाइज कौन सा रहेगा अगर मैं खुद का पोर्टफोलियो क्रिएट करता हूँ डायरेक्ट इक्विटी में, तो क्या सेक्टर वाइज एलोकेशन लेके चलूँ? मतलब जैसे 10-12 सेक्टर में से मैं कौन सा सेक्टर बेस्ट रहेगा जो मेरा 5 से 6 साल का पोर्टफोलियो एक हैंडसम सा रिटर्न रहे?
रवि,
पंकज जी, मैं अगर इसको आंसर करूँ ना, एक जियो जी ने पहले भी पूछा था कि अगर आप नया चालू कर रहे हैं तो क्या करना चाहिए। एडवाइस
सॉरी, मैं इंटरप्ट करूंगा, सॉरी। मेरे पास ऑलरेडी है, अभी मेरे पास जो एक्सपोजर ज्यादा है वो बैंकिंग और ऑटो सेक्टर का है, मतलब मोटा मोटी एक्सपोजर है। अभी जैसे मुझे कुछ नया पैसा एक्सपोज करना डालना है, तो मैं कौन सा सेक्टर फॉर 5 to 10 ईयर के लिए मैं सही कौन सा रहेगा अगर और ऐड करूँ तो?
सर, एक चीज ऐसी है कि आज के दिन बैंकिंग मेरे को अच्छा लगता है, ऑटो भी अच्छा लगता है, कंजम्पशन थीम इंडिया का अच्छा लगता है। बट एडवाइस ये होगा कि इफ योर प्रोफेशन इज नॉट टू ट्रैक मार्केट ऑन अ डेली बेसिस, आपका अगर प्रोफेशन ऐसा है कि आप डेली बेसिस में मार्केट नहीं ट्रैक करते, तो आप बेस्ट होता है सर इंडेक्स वाला इन्वेस्टिंग कीजिए। और आपको जो खुद से करना है ना, बिकॉज वी ऑल्सो फाइंड दैट किक बाई डिसाइडिंग ऑन द कंपनी एंड देन इन्वेस्टिंग बाय आवरसेल्फ। आप 100 रुपए में से 90 रुपीज इंडेक्स इन्वेस्टिंग कीजिए, 10 रुपीज आप अपने, क्योंकि ना बड़ा पैसा खुद से लगा के फिर वो ट्रैक करना बहुत मुश्किल होगा। इफ योर डेली प्रोफेशन इज समथिंग एल्स, आपका बिजनेस है या जॉब रिक्वायरमेंट कुछ और है, it will be very difficult. So my advice would be you do index investing in a small portion, 5-10%. You do it with your conviction. And coming back to the sector which you are asking, which I like banking, I like auto, I like anything which is discretionary consumption. I like companies where metal will be the user, से ऑटो हुआ, वाइट गुड्स हुए, जहां पे मेटल एज अ यूजर जाएगा, तो उस जगह मैं बुलिश हूँ। रियल स्टेट, आई एम बुलिश इन टर्म्स ऑफ रियल स्टेट इन इंडिया, बट रियल स्टेट कंपनी के बजाय जो उसके एंसिलरी होती है, बिल्डिंग मटेरियल, टाइल्स, सैनिटरी वेयर, वो सब कंपनीज पे आई एम बुलिश। क्या दीज आर द पॉकेट्स, अदरवाइज हर एक सेगमेंट में कुछ ना कुछ अच्छी कंपनी है, तो वैसे ढूंढने जाएंगे तो लिस्ट बहुत बड़ी है। एफएमसीजी वाले भी काफी कंपनियां डिसेंट वैल्यूएशन पे आ गई है, सो वो भी आप देख सकते हो।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
Yeah, Vijay, you can also ask. Yeah.
Hello, Prince sir, and thank you for accepting my request.
Hello. Yeah.
तो ऋषि सर भी चले गए और शरद सर भी चले गए, तो मेरी कोई स्पेसिफिक क्वेरी नहीं है मार्केट के रिलेटेड, बट आई डिसएग्रीड विद क्या नाम था उनका शरद जी के साथ, ऋषि जी। तो उन्होंने कहा वर्स्ट इज ओवर, तो डोंट यू थिंक कि इट्स टू अर्ली टू से वर्स्ट इज ओवर? मतलब अभी आगे बहुत इश्यूज हो सकते हैं, लाइक चाइना ताइवान है, पूरा वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर चेंज हो रहा है, यूरोपियन नेशंस में कुछ गवर्नमेंट चेंज हो गई, मतलब समथिंग इज कुकिंग ऑन वेरी हायर लेवल्स. तो अभी वर्स्ट इज नॉट बिहाइंड अस. आई गेस वी आर स्टिल वी आर येट टू सी द वर्स्ट. और मार्केट्स ऑलरेडी काफी ऑन स्टेरॉइड्स हैं, काफी ओवर वैल्यूड है. तो यहाँ इन्वेस्ट करना, या मतलब चलो इन्वेस्टिंग तो छोड़ो, बट ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि वर्स्ट इज ओवर.
देखिए विजय जी, ऐसा है कि ऋषि जी का वो विचार था और उससे आप असहमत होना या आपका व्यू है. आप अगर थोड़ा लेट आए होंगे, वैसे इसमें हमारे आज के स्पेस में रजत बोस जी आए थे और उन्होंने काफी डिटेल में मार्केट के संबंध में अपना व्यू दिया है, क्योंकि ही इज ए वेरी सीनियर एनालिस्ट, टेक्निकल एंड फंडामेंटल बोथ. तो अगर आप थोड़ा सा कष्ट करेंगे तो उनकी अगर आप सुन लेंगे स्पीच, तो शायद आपको सारे आपके जो डाउट्स हैं वो क्लियर हो जाएंगे. जो आपके मन में बातें हो सकता है आपको उससे सपोर्ट भी मिल जाए.
वाजपेयी जी, हम एक बार फैक्ट फाइंडर जी को बीच में मैंने स्टॉप किया था. सो फैक्ट फाइंडर, गिव मी नो योर नेम, फैक्ट फाइंडर.
Sorry, I can't say
Okay,
that.
okay, fine,
There's
fine.
reasons.
Yeah, got it. So you were saying something.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can conclude also with this. So then we will wrap up this space here. It's already 3 hours for us.
yeah. Let's look at data points, okay? So I think I got cut off when I was mentioning about agri. The rains were far better, but then the all India, in terms of actual kharif crop growing, we're actually 9.3% lower versus the same time last year. Now let's look at facts like CAD. India's CAD today, which is current account deficit, is the highest ever on a monthly basis. In fact, the country's premier strategist, which is Neelkant Mishra, who is a part of the PM's Economic Advisory Council, just 5 days ago came out with a report and a recommendation asking that the RBI consider a 3% depreciation of the rupee every quarter. You're talking about a 12% depreciation of the rupee. I was a little honestly shocked about it because I know the guy, and my estimate is probably, from given the fact that the rupee has already depreciated by 10% in the last 12 months, I would assume another 4-5% max. But he's talking about 12%, and he's the guy who's a part of the PM Economic Advisory Council. You got to take that very, very seriously, which essentially then puts a question mark about foreign inflows. I don't think foreign outflows have, we've just seen the tip of the iceberg. Only 5 or 7% of foreign holdings in India has been sold till date. That's it. It is nothing. It can be another 15% or double of that amount. So $31 billion can become $60 billion. Now, the mistake that India is doing is that we are allocating money away from debt, which is used to finance bonds, which is used to, and those bonds are used to finance capex. We are moving that to equity, which is actually not financing anything, and effectively giving an exit to foreign institutional investors. And Ravinder's point about saying that it's at the end of the day, equity is a good place to park money. I just wanted to and the fact, I think I appreciated his point saying that there is a scarcity premium. Remember, in the eyes of foreign institutional investors, there's no concept of scarcity because they don't need to invest in India. They can take money out of India, put it somewhere else. So there's no concept of scarcity. Now, going back to the facts about how bad our economy is, I think the two guys who pretty much said it recently was the chairman of Unilever. He said he said he's never seen demand so bad in his career. Dabur's ex-CEO, who's been the CEO for 12 years, he said, even if there is a recovery, I don't think this recovery will happen like it's ever happened before. It'll be a very, very weak recovery. And he said, I have never seen this scenario in consumption ever before. And this guy has been the CEO of Dabur for 12 years and been longer with Dabur. The third guy is Nielsen data. They are talking about the really bad demand environment. Now I'll give you one thing to think about, and this is worth thinking about. This is data that anybody can do themselves. You don't need to be intelligent. A retail investor can do it. This is public data. Just do not focus on the GST consolidated number. Divide the GST number into three parts:
the IGST, which is the intermediate GST, the SGST, which is the state GST, and the central GST, which is the CGST. When you pay your bill at a shop, you pay CGST and SGST. Why? Because that's the final transaction. Do you know how much the 2-year CAGR growth of CGST and SGST is? It's only about 18% cumulative over a 2-year period. What does that suggest? You adjust that versus the WPI. You on CGST and SGST adjusted for WPI, you've had 0% growth for the last 2 years. Your economy is not as good as people say it out to be. Looking at GST numbers is not the right way. You have to look at CGST and SGST. That is the final bill, and that's what you and I pay. In terms of numbers like autos, yes, I think autos is a good sector simply because there've not been no sales growth in 4-wheeler cars for 5 years. The sales of 10 two-wheeler cars is at a 10-year low. Obviously, at a 10-year low, things can only grow. The CV sales, if you look at the CV sales for the last 5 years, even if I extrapolate for the next 5 years, a 25% CAGR growth, the total amount of tonnage capacity in the country will not have grown more than 1% over a 5-year period, because we have gone through so much reduction in old fleet that whatever you're adding is not going to dramatically increase the amount of tonnage capacity in the country. The best way to track road construction in India is don't look at the government numbers. Look at the government also discloses a number called the bitumen consumption. Bitumen consumption, which is used as the tar to cover roads, that's been growing only at 5-6%. It's not been growing greater than that. And you can look at the data, it's all available in the public domain. It's disclosed on a monthly basis. Let's look at UPI data. A lot of people make a lot of talk about UPI data. I want to just share one data point. 1.5% of UPI users account for 50% of the volumes of UPI transactions, and they account for 80% of the value of UPI transactions. What does that mean? That 98.5% of the remaining UPI users only account for 20% of the value. It's nothing. So UPI, in fact, Pune, the value of UPI in Pune is bigger than Mumbai, despite the fact that Mumbai's GDP is several times that of Pune. And the reason is the biggest centers for UPI in this country are Pune, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. What's common in all of them? They're all IT hubs. So you typically will see a much higher usage of UPI in centers which are very tech savvy. So UPI is not as widespread as people think. If 1.5% of people have UPI account for 80% of volumes, it is not a replacement for cash. Also, one more thing. If India's GDP growth has, according to government data, has only grown 2% in the last 2 financial years between FY20 to FY22. Yet UPI transactions have gone to $1 trillion, which is almost like 33% of GDP. How come with such a huge growth in UPI, there's only been a 2% growth in GDP? Clearly, it means UPI is not. It's basically a lot more movement of some other transactions into UPI, like your replacement demand drafts, your replacement of checks, your replacement of NEFT, your replacement of a lot of other things. So just you need to start looking at a lot of dots. Don't just listen to numbers. And my view is, as Ravinder pointed out, was that a lot of industries are consolidating, because of which there is a scarcity factor, and that's a big problem for India. Because if more and more industries consolidate, it means lesser number of jobs and lesser number of white collar jobs. That's not good for India. We need more. We need more industries. We need more fragmentation of industries, and and that's good for the long-term growth of our economy.
Thank you.
Pathfinder, I have just one point to make. Whenever you have free time, I would love to listen to you, and have my more and more doubts clear whenever you have free time.
We'll arrange the spaces with you to sometime you coordinate and let me know. We would love to have a spaces so over a common topic of interest to both of you. and it's
Only one thing. This consolidation we can't stop here. Everyone is moving towards one direction. Everyone is reading the same J.K. Rowling. Everyone will watch the same Christopher Nolan. Everyone will move towards the unidirectional. That's the harm of technology and integration which technology is bringing. So consolidation, I don't think, and capitalism also, that also plays a bigger role. So consolidation, good or bad, but I don't think we would be able to stop it.
So Ravi, we save it for next time. So we surely will post a space with both of you.
प्रिंस जी बस ऐसा है कि एक आप डिस्क्लेमर दे दीजिए कि जितने भी हमारे स्पीकर्स हैं उन्होंने अपने व्यू पॉइंट जो रखे हैं
राइट
टाइम के हिसाब से हैं, उससे हमारा मतलब कोई हमारा एंडोर्समेंट नहीं है। यदि आपको उसके हिसाब से अपने को निर्णय लेने के स्वतंत्र है सब लोग, कोई हमारा एंडोर्समेंट नहीं है। सब लोगों को मैंने इसलिए एकत्रित किया so that everyone can get benefit. Just right.
So guys, as we, I mean, in the beginning also we made a disclaimer because it's very relevant that any names taken during the conversation were purely for discussion point of view and no sort of buy sell recommendation from any of the panelists or speakers. So obviously you need to do your own research and own due diligence before investing your hard-earned money. So these spaces should be considered on educational front only, and we have different panelists. They differ in their viewpoint, and that's the beauty of our spaces, that we have different people with different views. But in the end, the only thing we cherish is different views, but again they respect each other, and that is the beauty of our spaces. So with this note, I once again thank you everyone who came to our spaces today, and do connect with our handles, and surely we'll try to improve on our spaces, and will be more active and more like bringing more people with different perspectives over our spaces, and definitely it will be a mutual learning thing for us. So Vajpayee ji, it was really nice for today, and I think we shall Sharad sir,
गलती से दब गया था मैं।
धन्यवाद सभी आपको, प्रिंस जी, शरद जी, फैट फाइंडर जी, रवीन जी, आप सब लोगों ने बहुत समय दिया और अपने महत्वपूर्ण विचार रखे। तो आज के सभी को शुभ रात्रि। अब मैं इसको कंक्लूड करता हूँ। थैंक यू।